All right. Good evening. The time is now 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, May 17th, 2023, and this public meeting of the D.C. State Board of Education will come to order. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. Director Butler, please call the roll.
Representative Bernstad.
Present.
Representative Jones-Burgess. Representative Wages. Representative Washington.
Present.
Representative Williams. Present. Representative Chang. Representative Goulet.
Present.
Representative O'Leary. Here. Representative Henderson.
Here.
Representative Bess. Representative Thompson.
Present.
Representative Reed.
Present.
Representative Patterson. Madam President, you have a quorum.
All right. Now that a quorum has been determined, the board will now proceed with the business portion of the meeting. Before we do, we want to acknowledge that we lost a student today, very, very recently. So we're going to have a moment of silence before moving on with the rest of the meeting. Thank you. Members, we have a draft agenda before us. Are there any corrections or additions to the agenda? All right. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been properly moved and seconded. I will ask for the yeas and the nays. Please, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. The motion is approved. We now have the minutes of our May 10th working session before us. Is there a motion to adopt these materials?
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you. The motion has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing or seeing none, the motion is on the adoption of the May 10th working session minutes. I again will ask for the yeas and the nays. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion approved. Good evening. My name is Ebony Rose Thompson. I am the Ward 7 representative and also have the pleasure of serving as the president of the State Board of Education this year. On behalf of the D.C. State Board of Education members, I want to welcome our guests and the viewing public to our public meeting. The State Board plans to continue this in-person posture for our public meetings. The board holds its meetings regularly scheduled on the third Wednesday of every month at the Old Council Chambers, which are located at 441 4th Street Northwest. The meeting is being broadcast live via the District Knowledge Network and live streaming via the State Board's YouTube page, which is at DC SBOE. Before I get into a discussion of the items on this evening's agenda, I want to take a moment to share a few updates and highlights from the past month. Since we last met at our public meeting, the State Board has heard from DCPS Chancellor Louis Farabee at our working session, where he shared the progress DCPS undertook to develop equitable school budgets and review significant capital investments planned for DC public schools. The board's committees also shared their draft work plans and budget requests. Lastly, SBOE leadership met with Superintendent Grant to continually refine our next steps for voting on the draft social studies standards next month. This evening, the board will hear from 14 public witnesses. We look forward to hearing from all of you as you share your testimony on the draft social studies standards, seizure safe schools, gun violence prevention, sanitation in schools, school-based mental health, out-of-school time programs, and educator retention in schools. We encourage the public to sign up every month to publicly share testimony. As a reminder, sign up closes 48 hours before the public meeting, and the link can be found on our website, www.sboe.dc.gov. Our next public meeting of the State Board will be June 21st. It is going to be great. Perfect. That is actually perfect timing because I am now turning to our remarks from our State Superintendent, Dr. Grant.
Thank you, President Thompson, and apologies for my enthusiasm over the June meeting. President Thompson, Vice President O'Leary, and members of the State Board of Education, good evening. I'm pleased to be with you today, surrounded by truly dedicated folks working really hard every day to improve the lives and academic outcomes of our young people in the district. Today I'm going to share some brief remarks on a lot of our shared priorities, including social studies, student transportation, environmental literacy, and student safety. I will begin, perhaps for my second to last time, with remarks on social studies, which have been the primary focus of our collective work over the past 6 months. I'm pleased that after years of collaboration, we are 1 month away from a vote to update DC's social studies standards for the first time since 2006. It's been a lengthy and productive and collaborative process to get us to this point. Reminder for everyone that the board released guiding principles which informed our work, helped form our technical writing committee comprised of more than 25 local educators, teachers that are in our schools every single day. And after a multi-step process of drafting, we brought draft standards to the board and to the general public in December of 2022. Both the board and the public provided robust, actionable feedback, and we transparently have responded to each and every suggested revision. Thank you, and thank your staff so much for the recommendations that you have provided. We subsequently released a second draft of the standards incorporating the great feedback that we have received. Then Representative Henderson provided us with specific suggested edits on the second draft, and then the board held 3 additional public feedback sessions, which you then also collated and provided us with feedback on last week. We appreciate all the sets of feedback from the board, and I want to walk through what's going to happen next in terms of what board members will receive. We'll be providing the board with our response to Representative Henderson's feedback this Friday, and you'll receive that from our team. Then on the following Friday, May 26th, we will provide the final standards for your collective review, which will incorporate the second round of comprehensive feedback, Representative Henderson's feedback, and the feedback we received from the extended public comment period. So I'm giving you all homework 2 weekends in a row, and 1 weekend that's Memorial Day weekend. So everyone, you see all these nods, right? But it truly is the only way. We wanted to just be mindful of the feedback we've received and then be really responsive in how we're incorporating it. So thank you all for going on this journey with us. This will give members nearly a month's worth of time before the June 21st vote. And both my team and I will join you all on the June 7th working session so that we can present the final draft for your consideration and engage in that conversation during the June 7th working session. So I want to stamp all of that before you. This is really significant and historical work, particularly if you kind of navigated what's taken place in the district this week. Our city, all of our organizations, our schools, we should be really proud of how far we've gotten and how responsive we've been to this process. It's brought us to the precipice of this important vote, and one would argue it won't take us 20 years to endeavor in this work again. This collective board became the national leader in menstrual health standards, and I believe, and I'm excited to know that DC will have the most forward-looking set of civic engagement-minded social studies standards in the nation. And so thank you all for being on this journey. And I'm not good at sports, so I don't have sports analogies, but like we're running with the ball, and I just want us to score the thing. Touchdown, shot, etc. I love that y'all are all laughing at me. I've also given updates every single month on student transportation, and I want to give you an update on where we are now, and I have an ask. In previous years, we have struggled with receiving the timely submission of transportation request forms from our schools, particularly as we get started for extended year transportation services. Folks may not know, but we transport our students through the school year and through summer learning when we're required to do so. Timely submission is vital. It ensures that we can create over 500 bus routes to serve over our 3,800 students, and it's a critical part of our process. This year, prior to our May 1st extended school year deadline, we prioritized early and frequent communications to schools and LEAs to improve our timely submission. We launched a new website that displays the TRFs that are received by each LEA, and I'm excited that this new approach has paid off. Last year, by this time, we had only received 590 TRFs that were submitted for ESY, which is summer school transportation. This year, we have over 1,600 submitted on time. And so I want to frame for everyone that's a significant, both in terms of submission and also in terms of students numbered served, representing 95% of our anticipated students already having their submissions in on time. This means that we can design our routes, run them in advance. It hopefully will mean that summer school will take place without any hiccups. And this is the type of improved partnership that we want to continue to see with our LEAs and our families as we normalize, what all goes into place as we get started for ESY. In addition, I am working to try and restore the $3.6 million cut that was taken from OSSI DOTs in the FY23 budget through council's budget process, so that we have the resources that we need to have a strong start of the school year in school year 23-24, and that we can maintain our services and on-time delivery service during the summer. So I do want to call that out, that's active work that we are engaging in. As I mentioned in my remarks from last month, I look forward to the board appointing a representative to the Environmental Literacy Advisory Committee hosted by OSSI. In this changing world, environmental literacy and sustainability are more important than ever, and this is an important opportunity to build upon the district's strong environmental literacy foundation. We have appreciated the board contributions of members on other committees, including Representative Chang on our literacy task force, and I'm confident that the board's representation on the Environmental Literacy Advisory Committee will strengthen the plan as the committee develops. Student safety is imperative. It's imperative for student learning. It's imperative for its own sake. If a student doesn't feel safe, whether because of an infectious disease, street violence, bullying, their brain will be focused on their self-preservation, then it will be focused on the lesson that's in front of them. Building safe environments for our young people is a complex challenge, and students often face different and compounding safety concerns. We need well-resourced, well-planned emergency response personnel to respond to unexpected safety threats. We need supporting learning environments that teach children to build each other up, not tear each other down. Educators that need support in having the right behavior management tools and supportive administrative environments to effectively intervene to student misbehavior. Students need supportive home environments. When they don't feel safe and supported at home, they take all of those anxieties and they put them in their backpacks and they take them out at school. We need safe streets. This would be a whole lot easier if there wasn't a political party dedicated to quashing every common sense gun violence prevention bill ever put forward. But alas, that is outside of our locus of control. But what we can control, and what OSSI is doing in partnership with the Department of Behavioral Health, is growing supports for our school communities to respond to student behavioral health challenges. We've provided actionable practices and resources to help schools implement behavioral health plans, and we offer student-facing curriculum, staff training, and ongoing technical assistance to support schools in implementing mental health education and prevention programs that focus on suicide prevention, child sexual abuse prevention, and opioid prevention, all for zero cost to our schools. OSSI has supported educator wellness, which is important for supporting our school communities. We created an educator wellness technical grant to identify and respond to educator wellness needs. We invested in one-on-one coaching for school leaders. We set up racial allyship and equity-centered leadership groups for DC teachers and administrators, and provided educators with coursework on mindfulness practice. In addition, OSSI has recently won a $9.7 million grant to recruit and retain school behavior health workers for district schools. And we know we need to both build and train our labor force. I know you have a robust discussion on student and school safety this evening. I look forward to hearing what strategies you and your panel feel will be best to address student behavior challenges, in-school emergency situations, and out-of-school safety concerns. I don't know all the answers, but I do know that we must act with a sense of urgency to keep our students safe, promote learning, and build communal trust. Finally, I'm thrilled that the board will be considering 2 ceremonial resolutions to recognize outstanding teachers in our community, and I'm thankful to Board President Thompson, Vice President O'Leary, and Representative Patterson for joining OSSI at our May 3rd Teacher Educator Awards. It is a humbling moment to just sit in the awesomeness of our teachers and celebrate them and see how great they are. And in the midst of all things, you know the children are going to be right if you the children are going to be all right if you actually just spend time with the teachers that were in that room. They are the best of the best, and fun fact, they represent most of the educators in our system. So thank you for spending some time with us and watching us give out a lot of awards. Resolution CR 2305 is to recognize Coach Roundtree as DC Teacher of the Year. And he also served as a finalist for the 2023 National Teacher of the Year. And CR 2307 celebrates OSSI's DC Educator Award winners. I said it before, I'll say it again. It is actually the best part of my job is to celebrate and lift up our educators, to really spend time with them. Our Teacher of the Year, you know, is with the First Lady, and then he's also doing gym on the White House lawn. It's exciting to see the joy of what it means to be an educator in the district, and I'm really thankful that you're taking the time to acknowledge them. Thank you so much for letting me share some thoughts this evening, and I'm really excited about the specific next set of weeks ahead in the work.
Thank you, Dr. Grant, as always, for coming to our meeting. Special thank you for the chunked reading assignment. No, we will. It is not by accident that we are chunking the reading, because it is a lot. I'm saying it to you all as the public because I hope you all are reading along too. Also, of course, we're coming to celebrate the educators. I don't know how you can be on the board and not like teachers. That doesn't make sense. And then we'll look forward to voting on external appointments this evening. So so we can be check on all of our assignments. So thank you. All right, tonight's panel, it will provide insights and experiences on student safety and the impacts of public safety on students' physical and mental health. Panelists will describe their experiences with student safety and suggest what additional resources should be available to the public. This panel is a direct follow-up to SR 22-13, recommendations on public safety passed last November. I do want to thank the committee for their work in putting together this panel, and just, I guess, acknowledge, I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately that this is the topic we're discussing today. So we are privileged to hear from Marnier Robinson, student at Capital City Public Charter School, Erwin Royster, Director for Community Engagement and Partnerships, East River Family Strengthening Collaborative, Terrence Stanley, Staley, no, I think it's Stanley. Executive Director, Cure the Streets Alliance of Concerned Men. I'm going to ask all of you all to come to the table now. So start making your way. Each of you will have up to 5 minutes, and then we will move to one round of questions from the State Board. We are going to begin with you, Ms. Robinson, so I will let you all settle in. There is a clock in front of you, which I see is set to 3 minutes, so we're going to set it to 5. Awesome. And I believe it'll let you know, it'll be yellow, it'll be green at first. It's going to go to yellow to give you a warning. And then once the 5 minutes are up, it's going to give you a red. So I want to turn to you, Ms. Robinson, to start us off.
So I could just start?
Yes. Oh, and we have one mic, so you're going to have to share the mic. Make sure it's on and speak into it.
Okay. Good evening, members and staff of the board. My name is Monye Robinson. I am a Ward 4 resident and a senior at Capital City Public Charter School. Today, I would like to share with you my experience as a Black woman growing up in D.C. I am also here as an advocate for other students who I know have been impacted differently than me throughout D.C. When I began my journey as a student, there were many people and resources around me that I could come to when I felt unsafe. Many counselors, places, and also community members. These included the church up the street from my house, my neighbors, and some of whom have left D.C., and Emory Rec Center, which I still go to from time to time. Now that I am on the cusp of finishing this journey as a D.C. high school student, I have come to the realization that there are no longer the same level of resources at a student's disposal. D.C. used to be a place of community, where people weren't afraid of sending their kids outside without a doubt. Now we live in a place where students and their families have to question whether or not they will make it home with no complications. This means that they don't have a basic sense of security traveling throughout the community. This does not just exist in Ward 4. For the rest of my testimony, I'd like to talk about two big issues. One, safety before and after school outside the school building. Two, I'd like to talk about my experience and recommendations of safety within the school building. My testimony is not limited to just my experiences, as I know of others' experiences at Coolidge High School, Ballou High School, Eastern High School, Anacostia High School, and Paul Public Charter School. While all the neighborhoods near these schools are not the same, they do share similar challenges that need to be addressed. I have the luxury of being able to walk to and from school with no complications. However, my peers my age don't get to partake in the same experience. On many occasions, I have had my friends get out of an extracurricular activity, a sports practice, and call me because they feel unsafe getting home. So many students travel across our city every day to get to and from school. While we have extra people supporting us with safety right after school, I and many other high school students get out of school after those people are gone. This creates fear, not just because it's dark, but because of strangers and figuring out a reliable pathway home. One thing that can help is better communication from the metro because students find out changes too late and not everyone has a phone, knows to look at the app, and the timing of buses are unreliable. Another thing is when emergencies or shootings happen, which seem to happen pretty often now, students need plans of what to do and places to go. We shouldn't have to do this, but now it's become a norm for most of us. Therefore, schools can play a role in supporting students and families with figuring out plans of what to do in these situations. To transition within schools, there's a big difference between a security guard and a police officer. The security guards are able to talk to children, have the experiences of being a student, know our community, and haven't been conditioned to arrest us. When I or other students walk by a police officer, I feel obligated to speak or else they will stop me. There is a difference. They're dominating. They have tasers and guns. I have seen heads get pushed into concrete, people dragged out of cars, and other examples of aggressive behavior. All police officers aren't the same, but I can remember when I was 10 years old, I was sitting in the principal's office because I got into it with this girl because we had a light altercation. Then, out of nowhere, the police officer came into the principal's office and started yelling at me. He was asking me if I always get in trouble in school, what else have I done, and asked me if I'm a troublemaker. I immediately started crying and asking for my parents. This behavior didn't assume the best in me and define me as a bad kid, rather than understanding me. All the while, it was just me in that office, which made me feel uncomfortable. That's one of the main reasons why I don't want cops in schools. They're frightening. This creates a conditioning to be afraid of police officers. You can't tell me if a police officer walks into a school with a gun or a taser that students won't be intimidated. I don't have all the answers, but there are some things that I think should be a part of the conversation to improve public safety. One being better communication between schools and families, better training of security guards, but no officers. What does that mean? Okay. 3, police officers who are outside of schools should be assigned so that the community can build familiarity and trust with specific officers. And 4 being, when we think about mental health, improving public safety is really important to improving mental health. Literally, the anxiety and trauma of things we see in and around the school increases the fear of students experience every day. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I appreciate you and all the work you're doing to aid in improving our community.
Good evening, President Ebony Rose Thompson and members of the District of Columbia State Board of Education. My name is Erwin Royston. I'm the Director for Community Engagement and Partnerships with East River Family Strengthening Collaborative, located in Ward 7 of the district. My testimony is going to focus on safety of students along the Minnesota Avenue corridor and the strides that have been made by East River Family Strengthening Collaborative in the Safe Passage program. East River Family Strengthening Collaborative's mission is to empower families, youth, and seniors and communities to become more self-sufficient through integrated and collaborative community-based services utilizing evidence-based practices that are family-focused and person-centered. In order to fulfill our mission, we partner with government and non-government agencies. In November of 2018, East River was granted the Safe Passage Minnesota Avenue Station by the United Way. The pilot was an initiative by the government of the District of Columbia and the Deputy Mayor for Education to ensure that students get to and from school in a safe manner every day. Based on increased concerns around student safety, the school safety and safe passage working groups was established to better understand and enhance safety-related policies that impact District of Columbia public and charter schools. To facilitate this work, East River Family Strengthening Collaborative, the Deputy Mayor for Education, and community partners including Metro Transit Police and Metropolitan Police work together to monitor and intervene school traffic and activities to prevent incidents from happening. East River Family Strengthening Collaborative identified community watches to work in partnership with Metro Transit Police and MPD and school security staff to intercede when there was knowledge of a situation that may result in unsafe behaviors of students. Community watches were strategically placed in communities to maximize oversight of the safe passage target areas, which included Cesar Chavez Public Charter School, Neville Thomas Elementary School, and Friendship Collegiate Academy. To guarantee student and community participation, the Safe Passage workers collaborated with the schools to convene meetings with the students and their parents to obtain information to better serve them. The staff also coordinated community meetings to obtain feedback and ideas that will support the success of Safe Passage. All partners shared information regarding safety concerns and mobilized to take appropriate steps to keep students safe. East River Family Strengthening Collaborative convened stakeholders meetings monthly to discuss the status of the pilot. These meetings included community stakeholders, school staff, Metro Transit Police, Metropolitan Police, and the Deputy Mayor of Education. The first year, we were able to intervene and prevent 2 large fights from occurring. Today, the Minnesota Avenue Safe Passage program spans the Minnesota Avenue corridor to include Sousa Middle School and Kimball Elementary School, Cesar Chavez Public Charter School, and Friendship Collegiate Academy, as well as 2 Rivers Middle School and Phelps High School in the Langston area. However, there are still challenges we face, one of which my colleague talks about in this narrative. The Benning Road, Minnesota Avenue corridor is filled with knowledge, growth, and struggle. There is a lot of prosperity and concrete supports in the community. That is East River Family Strengthening Collaborative, DC Public Library, the Department of DOES, the Department of Employment Services, So Others May Eat, MBI, which is a mental health program, the One's Office, Boys and Girls Club, and Unity Healthcare, and there are many others, in addition to faith and religious institutions. The community struggles with gun violence, drugs, crime, and inadequate parenting, and it does sometimes overshadows the impact of these concrete supports. Terrence states to me, it sometimes seems that there is one success story for every 5 challenges. There are redevelopment projects throughout the community. That is, new buildings going up, the sale of the East River Park Shopping Center, the transition of Park 7 to the atrium, the opening of new businesses and CBOs, and the installation of bike lanes and speed cameras. The community has had stretches of bad patches with opioids, car theft, robberies, break-ins, and gun violence. They have come and gone in rashes, but the impacts are still the same. It was stated to me that the residents that Park 7 had to change its name due to the stigma that became attached to it by the first responders. 6-7 it was called. This was because they were receiving more than 5 calls a day for services. That is thefts, domestic violence situations, fightings, ODs, etc. Over the last couple of years, the community has seen a lot of opioid deaths. There's a wealth of Washingtonians in the community that have witnessed several transitions. One complaint that they all have in common was the need to access good food from a reliable supermarket. Everyone complained about the conditions and the price of Safeway. One thing I wanted to continue on, that East River is making strides with its family success centers to really improve and enhance the lives of the youth going to and from school along the Minnesota Avenue corridor. It is a safe passage program that we are building, but there are still supports that are needed. And we want to work with, continue to work with the out-of-school time program and the State Board of Education to bring quality programming to the Minnesota Avenue corridor. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Terrence Daly, and I'm the Executive Director of the Alliance of Concerned Men. It's a pleasure to be in front of you today. And I think this is a monumentous time because this year specifically, community-based workers are in DCPS schools doing the amazing work that they did years ago when the district was the murder capital. And so to speak about some of the work that my colleague here has done, we worked together in the Minnesota Avenue corridor. And so the Alliance Concerned Men began providing services when the mass shooting happened in Minnesota Avenue. And we all remember that occurred. And so we received resources to be able to facilitate some of the trauma that was implemented on the community and to try to give it some kind of resilience and reestablishment. And so we began providing the conflict resolution, which is our conflict resolution manual that's copywritten in partnership with American University's Department of International Conflict Resolution and Peace. And so we were bringing students, young adults, into the office to provide them conflict resolution sessions. And so the first session that we provided, we only had resources for 20 students, and 40 showed up. 2 of them had been shot. One student walked up to me and said, "Hey, Mr. Terrence, you know, he had staples in his stomach." He lifted up his shirt. He said, "Hey, I'll never miss a session." I said, "Come on in." But the thing that's very important to recognize is that that individual was inside our office getting conflict resolution instead of outside retaliating. And that other individual that was sitting down there, they didn't know if they had shot at each other, but they were both inside that session getting conflict resolution. And that just speaks to some of the work that we're doing. And so we're partnered with to do Safe Passage and Suzanne Kimball in this effort in Greenway community in the Minnesota Avenue corridor. And then we're also providing services through DCPS for conflict resolution inside of Eastern, Jefferson, and Global. So these are feeder schools. So the conflict resolution, what it does, it gives them the skill set to be able to mitigate conflict inside of their own homes. So when they step outside that home, they give their brothers and sisters more grace. And we're in Eastern, Jefferson, and Global weekly, once a week. And in the session, we provide food because we know at times some aggression is because they don't have the resources that are needed to be able to mitigate some of that conflict and speak to that. And so that has been a serious impact inside of Eastern specific to be able to mitigate some of the things that happened last year. Now, it's not an entire fix, right, because wraparound services need to happen, but that is a start point. And so we have individuals that are culturally competent in there providing those resources. And from that partnership, the Credible Messenger Initiative was brought in to Eastern High School. So these are a first of a kind after 20 years of community-based organizations providing resources to the youth that are committed to DYRS, right? And they're still going to our public schools and they need additional resources. And the school must recognize that this student needs those resources and the school does not have everything they need to provide those. And so we're able to have conflict resolution with Credible Messenger assigned youth on a caseload, receiving wraparound services, not just in the community, also in the home and inside that school, which mitigates conflict, in addition to our Safe Passage. And so our initial partnership was with Susan Kimball. Now we have 3 contracts with DCPS. And it's essential that you keep community-based organizations working inside these schools and give the time to be able to manifest the diamond that is created for. Those that are prior incarcerated have and cultural relevant, they have a commitment to redemption. And that is a skill set that is not often identified and used. When they decided to make themselves more comprehensive and get that education to be able to provide those services as a certified curriculum, they are the ones that are real change agents in our communities, and they're transferable. And we're not saying that law enforcement does not have a position to do their job, they do, but they must understand there has to be a more comprehensive approach to public safety that includes the community in the conversation and has the community at the forefront of the conversation. So it's 4 prongs. So now we have the educational institution, we have law enforcement, and we have community-based organizations. And this triangle can be developed if they have time to develop what that looks like. Now, this is the first year. Let's look to see at least 3 to 5 years, and then quantify this through evidence-based data for the sustainability.
I want to thank our panel. I'm also going to turn to Executive Director Butler to call the roll for questions. So questions are coming to you all from the members. I believe we have 3 minutes for questions. Yes, for each member. Members and panelists. Pro tip: the 3 minutes does include the question and the response.
We will start with our student representatives. Representative Bernstadt.
Okay, thank you all so much for your time. I have a few questions. I'm going to start with Mr. Royster. You talked about identifying community watchers. I have a few questions. How were these community watchers chosen? Are they all mandated reporters? And how else have they been trained?
No, thank you for that question. The community watchers come exactly from the community. Some may have had some past with law enforcement, but generally these are folks from the community that know the community that folks feel comfortable with. In one of our schools, we have mothers that are out there. And while kids sometimes don't like to have moms out there doing safe passage, they provide us with some valuable information because other kids come up and talk to the mothers and let us know what's going on in the school. They create a great relationship, and they are able to create a great bond with the other community watchers or the safe passage providers.
So do you reach out to schools and they connect you with people that they know in the communities, or what is the process for actually finding these people in the community?
So we do a couple of the things. So number one, we partner with community-based organizations like not Concerned Black Men, Alliance of Concerned Men. We also partner with another agency, which is Inner City, who has experience in working with youth that are adjudicated. And we use persons that are reentering society. We also work with the community. So there is a form or there is a mechanism by way folks that are interested in participating in the program can access us. They send us resumes. We review the resumes, we interview them to make sure that there's a fit. They pass a background check, and then they're trained and they come on board.
And none of these people physically have weapons on them or
No,
anything?
they do not, no.
Okay, no guns, no tasers?
No,
Awesome.
no. So the purpose, and let me explain this real quickly. The purpose of the community watcher or the safe passage personnel is to develop a relationship to move kids back and forth.
Okay. I don't think I'll have time for all my questions, Manya. I want to say thank you so much for your testimony, but I have a question for Mr. Staley. Can you talk more about what the sessions look like and when they occur and how frequently they occur? Does it only occur after conflict happens?
No, this is a preventive tool. And so just to give you an example of the curriculum, it's strengths and weaknesses, triggers and soothers, visible identity, identity construct. And then we added a cultural approach to the beginning so they understand who they are, so they can see their brothers and sisters and brothers and sisters. And so it's every single week. Now in the community, we have ages 14 to 24, Wednesdays and Fridays, and they receive a stipend for their participation. And it's a virtual hybrid approach.
Okay.
So those that aren't comfortable being in person, they can still be virtually online. Those that have existing beefs, because that's who we tend to attract, and that's our target population, to be able to work that out with that individual, either in person or virtually, Wednesdays and Fridays.
Okay. Thank you all so much for your time.
Representative Washington.
Hi. I wanted to thank you all again for coming out and giving and sharing your heartfelt testimonies. I had mainly one question for Ms. Robinson, but anyone can answer. I know you mentioned DC being a place of community in the past and the importance of having those safe spaces that we can go to, kids can go to. So I was wondering, what would an ideal safe place for students to come to look like if it was in schools?
For me, it was always the rec center that was close, and I know they're everywhere. I think it's DCPR. They're it was always someone at the front desk that I could talk to, and they hold different sports for them. Some have a private football team, a cheer team, and things like that. So it was always the rec center for me.
And then do you think that those like students would feel more comfortable in those spaces if they were outside of school and like in easy to access places in their community versus in school around like teachers and adults?
I feel like outside of school is better because then they have something to go to outside of school. Like, I mean, you can connect the two. Like, like maybe.
I'm sorry, could you lean in closer to the microphone? We can't hear you.
Sorry. Maybe advertise like whatever they're holding at the rec center at the school or the schools around the rec center so that kids will feel more involved or feel more included. But outside of school is better.
Thank you. That was it.
Thank you. Representative Henderson?
Thank you all for your testimony. Ms. Robinson, thank you for sharing. In just a few minutes, you very deftly showed how broad and complex this issue is. We need to consider inside the school building, outside the school building. You pointed to some very specific things that we can do to help with Metro being more predictable with their communication. And thank you also for highlighting community and resources that are needed. I might circle back to you if I have enough time. Mr. Royster and Mr. Staley, thank you for your work that you do. Mr. Royster, I'm curious about the training that happens for safe passage workers, and I'm also wondering if that is something that is standard across the program, or is that something that each CBO is developing on their own? And if the latter, is there some communication, coordination about best practices and so on?
Sure. So every safe passage worker goes through the out of school time training program. So there's a curricula that's developed. So everyone goes through a positive youth development curricula. Everyone goes through various trainings on adolescent development, so we understand what the kids are going through. So there's definitely a set curriculum that everybody gets trained on. And normally that training occurs during when the school is out on break, so that everybody can take full advantage of that particular training. And there are ongoing trainings also. No, but this training occurs, this training is administered through the out of school time, so everybody gets the same training.
Okay. A lot of our programs have struggled over the past year, several years, with staffing and turnover. How has that been for your program and for Safe Passage generally?
So we see no different. So if you think about it, how do we find the individual that wants to work 2 or 3 hours in the morning and then 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon? So that's how we have to find the volunteers. We have to engage the PTAs, the community residents that want to come out. Some of our Safe Passage workers just do the morning shift. Some do the evening shift. Some do dual roles. So some are working in that capacity for a while, doing the what do we call it, the watching, the Safe Passage watchers, and then they shift into another role, and then they come back in the evening to do the Safe Passage piece.
Some school leaders have asked for expanding the timeline. Could you envision, a broader day for at least some of the staffers so that they're there, say, when classes are going to recess, so that Safe Passage folks are there during maybe the middle of the day as well?
Sure. So we have that type of program at one of our schools, is that after Safe Passage, just like Mr. Staley stated, we do restorative justice programs inside of the school. So that person shifts then and goes inside the school, and the school sometimes identify kids or a group of kids that need some kind of restorative justice or need some type of activity, some type of social emotional activity. So that provider is able to, or that person is able to provide that.
Thank you so much. Representative Reed?
Good afternoon, or evening to the members of the panel. Ms. Robinson, thank you for your points. I just got done with engaging students at Anacostia High School, about 20, and definitely your points 1 and 3, your peers there mentioned something similar. So I'm happy to see that there's a theme going, at least with some of the peers, and we have some consistency. So I'm happy to hear or see your testimony. I think the bulk of my questions are going to go to Mr. Royster, and also kind of piggybacking on what Representative Henderson said. So it seems like y'all have a really good thing going on in the Minnesota Avenue corridor. I used to work at DCPS Early Stages, which used to be right there. I'm not sure if they moved. And yes, we could have used some people to move students along. I also currently live right in front of an elementary school. And I'm not pointing fingers, but here's what I notice in the morning when I'm watching sometimes Safe Passage, people walking through. There are Safe Passage workers on their phone. And I can't say that I'm not on my phone at some point in the day too. But I'm curious about how do we streamline the engagement of Safe Passage workers so that they either have an activity, something that might, kind of make sure that, everybody's kind of on task as much as possible. So yeah, I'll turn it over to you to kind of talk about like that engagement piece.
Sure. So I have to admit, sometimes Safe Passage workers during a lull period, they may be on the phone, or sometimes they're on the phone communicating. So one thing we do, we have this real-time communication that's going on. If there's an incident, we're talking to our colleagues out in the field. Hey, this is what's going on at the Metro. Or we're communicating with a point person saying, hey, there is an incident that is about to happen, that's look like it's going to happen. We need more support here. So you may see a person texting. You may see just individuals taking notes.
Okay.
So if a child is in a situation or somebody wants help with something, we have certain apps that we can go to and put in that person's information and get them some real-time information if that needs to happen.
Thank you. Follow-up question for that. Mr. Staley might be able to help with this one too. So it sounds like Minnesota Avenue is mostly with moving kids along in that corridor, and it sounds like it's also a bit of a different demographic than my elementary school kids I see every morning. We are more worried about, or I'm more concerned about community safety. Literally gunshots, 12 o'clock in the afternoon last Friday. And yep, thank you. But I also know, I'm not sure if the city has protections for moving those Safe Passage workers beyond the gates right there, when in reality they might need to be 1 or 2 blocks over. So can you talk about the support around building up blocks of safety versus just right in front of the building?
I understand exactly what you're saying. I could do it real quickly. We partner with the Alliance of Concerned Men because their office is way down in, I would say D Street? Okay, Du Bois Place, I'm sorry. Du Bois Place. Du Bois Place is a feeder to Eli Place.
I'm getting in trouble.
Okay.
But we'll figure out a way to get the rest of your answer.
No, Irwin's getting in trouble. It's fine. I know Irwin. Go ahead.
Thank you. Representative Goulet.
I just want to thank you all for your testimony today. I know about the great work both of your organizations do, and I think you've brought up so many points today that could be useful to informing, what the council is putting together right now, of kind of having comprehensive voices on this task force to look at every aspect of school safety. And you mentioned, I think, 3 prongs to it. I would even add a 4th. You mentioned, I think, law enforcement, the community, and then our community-based organizations. I would just also add to that, like the principals and teachers, that voice to it, having all of those people in a room. And can you talk a little bit about the interaction you have with the principals and the SROs? So if there's an incident within the school that they hear about, that they're able to communicate that to you so you can keep an eye out for it, either on the way home from school, or if it's an incident that maybe occurred overnight, to be aware of it as kids are coming in.
Yes, so we have constant communication with the principal and also the deans, depending on the school. Sometimes the dean is the front person, sometimes the principal is the front person. And specifically for Sousa, so Dean Klavitz will contact ACM, sometimes outside of Brother Royster here, if there's something that is brewing. There was a time where there was a fight amongst 2 young ladies. Mm-hmm. And the 2 young ladies didn't want to fight anymore, but their parents were making them fight. And so we had to bring the parents, because the school can't handle that type of situation. Yeah. And law enforcement is not going to handle the situation unless somebody is damaged. And so we had to bring the parents to our office and do a mediation there. And then we had to bring the students separate and do a mediation there. And then the fight continued because the parents still didn't want it to happen. It wasn't until the students got in front of their parents and said, I'm not fighting this individual anymore. I've learned skills to be able to mitigate this conflict. We want peace. They had been through so much trauma. So that's the idea of them contacting us as well. That's Sousa. Now let's talk about Jefferson. So we have a caseload that's specific to the youth that we have every single week, and they monitor them. So now they're not fighting. Now they're being, at times, a little energetic in class, right? And so we're able to talk to the teacher, sit inside that class, to be that present so that student has a reminder to use those skills that they learned in that session. Also, in transaction with Jefferson, as far as food being the resource for them to receive, take the food away, right? Because they can eat regular lunch. How much do they really want the content? How much is this content conducive for their lives? And how is this content affecting the overall school culture? And so these different measures are being tested, and communication is consistent.
Well, there's one last point I'll make, but I only have 17 seconds, so we can follow up after this. But I love that you mentioned out of school time, and I would just be really interested in working with you to see how we can develop that between 3:30 and 6, have positive experiences for the youth and get them to and from those safely. So I don't want to get in trouble by going over time, so love to follow up with you afterwards on that.
Thank you. Representative Patterson? Representative Best?
Thank you. As a former teacher who has lost 4 students to gun violence in 10 years, this topic is probably the most important that I'm going to ever be a part of. Without student safety, nothing else matters. One thing I've learned is that there is rarely, but sometimes it happens, a universal good or a universal bad. So my question is, and this is posed to all of you, how do we ensure that our students feel safe while making sure that they are safe in our schools? And so I know that it's two questions, but they're both equally important, especially as we think of, the polarizing topic of SROs and no SROs.
Could you repeat your question one more time?
Yeah. The question was, how do we ensure that our students feel safe while making sure that they are safe, especially as it relates to the topic of SROs and no SROs?
I feel like a constant form of check-ins and things like that also are very helpful. It helps stop the problem before it even starts or before it even gets bigger. So I feel like a constant form of check-ins on different schools. I know it's endless public schools, endless public charter schools, if you go down the list to check in with, but even if you have a student representative the ones on the school board giving a weekly check-in of each school, then that would be easy. You could use the safety passage people to check in with people from the school board and things like that.
Thank you.
And just to add just a piece to that, when we started providing conflict resolution in the Eastern, and these are feeder schools, right? High school, middle school, elementary school. So it's a different approach when it comes to providing this type of conflict resolution. And of course, they weren't initially receptive, right, to triggers and soothers, right? That verbiage, it can cause someone to feel trauma. But to understand what triggers you and then what soothes you in that moment is so important, because that mitigates a lot of conflict. And so when we first put up the content, they said we didn't want to do it. So I said, let's provide a safe space. And for the first 4 weeks, all we did was pack out the auditorium. We had over 100 students, we were supposed to have 20 on the caseload, coming to our safe space. And so having them design what safety looks like for them and then walking them down to engagement is the comprehensive approach.
Thank you. Don't even set yourself up, Erwin.
Representative Williams?
Thank you, though.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Robinson, for your testimony, and thank you both for your work. I'm going to go just one question at a time. First question to Ms. Robinson. You had mentioned that improved communication is better between schools and families and students. I'm curious, what do you think is the best method, or should schools just offer a variety of methods? Do you think that we need kind of clear ways of tracking, whether it be text alerts or emails, or should there be an alert system? What are your thoughts on what the best and most efficient forms of communication are?
I feel from experience, I feel as though calling home and alerts and things like that are the best form of communication, because you're talking to them directly rather than just sending a text or sending an email.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Royster, you had said that there's like a uniform way of training safe passage workers. Can you elaborate a little bit, like how long that training is, or is it a couple months, a couple weeks? How's it structured?
So the first piece is a 30-hour training, and then there are subsequent trainings after that that folks can go through. So when students are on their Easter break, safe passage workers are in training that whole week. And we have the out-of-school time office administering those trainings. When the students are on another break, the safe passage workers are in another training. And a list is kept that folks have to go through a certain amount of trainings per year in order to maintain that status.
Thank you. So I have 3 questions. I'm going to try and get them all in. So very quickly, Mr. Royster, so I'm curious, you had said more support is needed. What support do you feel like you particularly need? And then I'm curious, what data do you track? Like, how do we not, measure, for lack of a better word, how things are working and what success looks like?
So when we say support, I will go back to a time when along the Minnesota Avenue corridor, there were drop-in centers that youth could go to, that they felt safe, that there were caring adults there. So when I look at those supports were there. They were there primarily because we were facing an HIV epidemic, and we were trying to get a handle on it. I'm talking about 2005 to 2007. So there were funds from the CDC, there were funds from the Department of Health, there were funds from APRA, and there was also the DC Trust coming together to provide community-based organizations with these fundings so they could provide the drop-in centers. So the kids got these positive youth development activities. That's the type of support we need to look at today, because in reducing HIV, we also reduce the violence, other issues.
Thank you. So I will ask another question, and I won't put either of you in trouble as well. But Mr. Zay, I just want to say thank you as well for your work. I'm curious to learn more about the conflict resolution work. I know it's needed in our schools, as neighborhood conflicts spill over from parents to students.
Thank you, Representative Williams. Vice President O'Leary.
On my way here, I got a call that a student had been killed at Roosevelt High School, 17-year-old young man, about 4 blocks away from my house. We have to undergo a sea change in the way that we think about what safety is in this city. Because when I was driving by McFarland and Roosevelt, there must have been 30 police cars on Iowa Avenue who responded to what happened in the neighborhood. But that was after the fact. The biggest problem we have is guns. And it seems like we don't do anything to get rid of guns in the city. They're too accessible. And I've been an educator for over 50 years, and I've lost dozens of students to gun violence. And when Ms. Robinson talked about SROs, I have a lot of friends who are police officers, and I know there are a lot of really good police officers, but police officers can't stop someone from shooting somebody else at all. And I know that when we talked about SROs a couple years ago, and the council just voted to put SROs back in the schools, that is not a panacea. That's not something that's going to solve the problem. The problem is that the government has to be proactive about someone who shoots somebody. They shouldn't be back on the streets. And I know that you have returning citizens in your programs, and I know how valuable that knowledge is, and I think that we need to really work on that. I just would like you to respond to that.
Well, You know, we were at a forum at Friendship Collegiate Academy a year ago, and the students tried to challenge one of our safe passage workers. The student asked the safe passage workers, what would you do if somebody stepped to your man? Trying to get him to say he would retaliate in violence. His response was, I probably would cry. And dead silence fell across the room. What he was trying to convey is that what he did to land him 10 years in jail took 10 years of his life. So at 16 years of age, he was in jail. He was incarcerated. And he told them what he lost during that period. And he did not want to relive that. So that's what keeps him staying on that particular road. A lot of the other returning citizens that were there echoed the same sentiment. And we can see the posture of the students change. And I would say after that, we had a better rapport with the students along the Minnesota Avenue corridor.
Thank you, sir. President Thompson?
Okay, so Erwin, of course, is not in trouble with me because he is my friend. What I will do is, with my 3 minutes, I will ask, is there anything that you feel like we need to hear this evening before we close this conversation that you did not, any of you, did not get to say in the time we've had so far? I suggest you don't let Erwin go first.
I think there's a subset of scholars that in the school system that we negate and that we aren't comfortable with, and that is suspension and expulsion. And so one thing that we did at Sousa and Kimball to identify our youth that were candidates for conflict resolution, we had them give us their suspension and expulsion students first. And I think that for all the schools that have those students, we know that budget is affected by it. But if you connect them with a nonprofit organization that can facilitate that extra attention in addition to their education, that's a win-win situation. So I think that we should really focus on expulsion and suspension students and not get rid of them, but provide additional resources to keep them in the school. If they decide to be at peace, that school's going to be at peace. If they feel appreciated despite what's going on in that home, they will appreciate that school. Only has to happen one time for their mind to change and not to be aggressive. One time.
So like in my testimony, as a student growing up in Washington, D.C., I've realized like we've lost touch with the sanctuary portion of what Washington, D.C. is supposed to be. We're supposed to be a freedom place of things like that. So I feel as though like not having somewhere to go when it's like when we feel unsafe and stuff like that, it's like it pushes students like myself into a hole. So I feel like we should have more community places, if you know what I'm saying. Like when I said something about Emory Rec Center, like I'm very adamant as to rec centers being a place of sanctuary for students like myself.
You gonna bring us home, Mr. Royster?
So I echo both of the panelists' sentiments, and what it speaks to, you did the right thing. What it speaks to, kids need to be in an environment where they feel safe, where they feel free, where they feel that somewhere where they can just be themselves. Again, we have to remember they're adolescents. They're going through a change. And we have to help them with that change. They're going from not being a kid anymore to being an adult and somewhere in between. And a lot of stuff is happening. And we need to work with them to make that happen. And I apologize. I just have to say this. You know, I watch kids along the Minnesota Avenue corridor. We think they're bad because they want to hang out in the Metro parking lot. They're not bad. They're doing what teens do. They hang together. We have to join them, and we have to find a space where they can be themselves, hang together, and we get supports for them. Teens don't want to go home after school. They want to hang out. And we have to create an environment where they can hang out, where it's safe. And last piece, we have to see how we can mitigate social media. That's the fuel for all of this. I'm going to stop there.
Thank you. All right. I want to thank our panel very much. I want to thank our members. I do expect this to be a continued conversation. This panel was a follow up to a previous conversation because we are not going to pretend like we have one panel and we've heard everything and we've solved everything. But I do want to appreciate your contribution to the conversation tonight. You all, of course, can leave the table. For members of the public, you should know that this will be part of the board's ongoing work over the next probably 18 months or so, focused on understanding the impacts of violence and public safety on students' mental health and well-being, and focused on solutions for all our education stakeholders. The board is actually going to go into recess for a few minutes. It is 6:35 now by my time, so probably 6:36. So I'm going to ask that we are back and we are going to reconvene at 6:41. So thank you to the panel. I'm going to give us recess and we will see the public witnesses when we're back. Thank you.
We have 45 seconds before the meeting reconvenes.
All right. We hear testimony from public witnesses at every public meeting, and your comments become part of our official record. If you would like to speak at a future public meeting, please sign up on our website at sboe.dc.gov or contact our staff by email at sboe@dc.gov or by phone, many options, 202-741-0888. Tonight, we have 14 individuals who submitted public testimony. We will hear from those in attendance in two panels. Wait, no, that's not gonna work. 1, 2, 3. I'm like, who wrote that? Okay, 1, 2, 3. In panels of 5. All right. Each witness will have up to 3 minutes to provide your testimony. Please note that you must use the microphone at the table. If you hear yourself, that's great, but we want the people who are watching online to hear you too. So speak into the microphone because they will not hear you if you do not speak into the microphone. It should already be on. The timer on the table will be green for the first 2.5 minutes and yellow for the last 30 seconds. Once you see red, that means your 3 minutes have lapsed. After our public witnesses speak, we will pause for questions from members. Members will have 3 minutes for questions for our public witnesses. Those 3 minutes, friendly reminder, do include the question or comment and the answer. Ms. Butler will call the public witnesses to the table and the question rounds. She will also assist with timing to ensure our witnesses and board members stay within their allotted time. Ms. Butler, you may ask public witnesses to come to the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Oliver Tino. Molly Ellis. Ebony Goddard. Samantha Bertucci. Laura Fuchs. Ulysses Cordoba. Okay, we will start with Oliver and work our way down.
First off, I would just like to say thank you to the DC Board of Education for letting me speak today. My name is Oliver Teneo Capola, and I'm 16 years old, and I live in Ward 6. I'm here to support the board. Developing a resolution that would make our schools safer for children with epilepsy. 1 in 26 people have epilepsy. That means in DCPS alone, there are probably 2,000 students that have epilepsy, and that does not include children who have seizures unrelated to epilepsy. That means just in the past few years, 20 states in the country protect their children through seizure-safe school legislations. Maryland passed legislation in April 2022, and Virginia's legislation went into effect in July 2022. Now the DC Board of Education is being asked to consider a resolution, and I hope you will pass one. As a DC resident and teen living with epilepsy, I ask you to consider this resolution very seriously. I was diagnosed with epilepsy at the end of first grade. if my teachers had been trained about seizures, she would have known I was having absence seizures for the past few months. And earlier than I was diagnosed, and I'm lucky to be medicine-free and seizure-free now, but I'm worried about what other kids are experiencing. I worry about kids having seizures and the teachers not knowing how to help or what to do. A resolution for seizure-safe schools is an important first step at protecting children and ending ignorance about epilepsy. This is only a first step to legislation, but it is an important one. I'd like to recognize Brandon Best for support on this legislation. Thank you.
You go to the next person.
All right, can you guys hear me? Okay, I am Molly Ellis. I'm a DC resident, a DCPS parent, and a DCPS teacher. I have 3 kids who attend DCPS. Last summer, my daughter Ava was diagnosed with epilepsy, and it's something straight out of a parent's nightmares. Right before she was diagnosed, we found out she got accepted at a DPR dance camp that she'd been looking forward to for a really long time. 2 days before she was, or 2 days after she was released from the hospital, we found out that DPR camps aren't safe for kids with epilepsy. They won't administer medication in case of a seizure, which means kids potentially could die. We were a couple weeks shy of her starting first grade. I was happy. I was excited because school could be safe for her. When we were actually at the hospital with her when she was getting her diagnosis, I was offered a job at her school, which is Brent Elementary School. Brent is an amazing school full of really experienced, really passionate, really amazing educators. I was excited for Ava to have a safe place in her life where she could just be a first grader. Before school, I met with her principal and teachers, and I shared with them about her seizure action plan. And in the meeting, I found out that nobody was seizure safe trained. Nobody knew seizure first aid. DCPS wasn't safe for her. I gave them all the information I knew, but it really didn't feel like enough. I knew, though, that she was really lucky. I worked 1 floor above her, so in case she had a seizure, in case there was an emergency, I could run, I could give her the medication, I could give her what she needed. Sorry. Through just learning about how little people knew about seizures, I became a seizure first aid trainer. A lot of the teachers at our school decided to take the training on their own time. It was amazing. Fast forward to March, just a few weeks ago. Ava went to the office, the health office, to get medication to prevent a seizure. The nurse refused to give it to her. She wasn't comfortable treating Ava. I got called out of my classroom to give her medication, but it was too late. Ava was sent home and had several preventable seizures. So DCPS right now is not safe for kids with epilepsy. Nursing staffing issues aside, it's irresponsible for the school board to put kids like Ava in danger every day. Seizure first aid training is not only free, but it takes 90 minutes. 90 minutes of a teacher's time to keep kids like Ava safe. As Oliver said, 1 in 26 people in the US has epilepsy. I have a quote that I can share with you in a little bit from somebody from DC Student Health talking about the extreme increase in seizures that have been reported in DCPS students in the last 2 years. DC educators need to have seizure first aid training to protect their students. Students with epilepsy are severely bullied. Teachers think they're goofing off. They're not paying attention. No, they're having seizures. Teachers need to be trained to keep kids like Ava and Oliver safe.
All right, I'm gonna get to what I wrote next, but I also want to share that I had a student have their first ever seizure in my classroom this year, immediately after our classroom was in lockdown, and it was one of the most horrific things that has happened to me as an educator, and the fact that this training exists and I didn't even know about it when it could have made such a difference for that student and family who had been in the US for 4 months. I will definitely be following up with you after this. But what I came to talk about today is our self-contained programming, specifically for young children in the District of Columbia. DCPS is, and the district in general, is obviously at an obligation to make sure all of our students have access to FAPE. I believe what's happening in many of our self-contained classrooms right now, specifically for young children, is not meeting the criteria of FAPE.
Of the last 5 years, 3 of them, our early childhood self-contained classrooms have been over-enrolled. On March 21st, we got an email that all of our programs would be over-enrolled by at least 1 if our programs were not fully staffed student, or 2 students if our programs were fully staffed. I think it's important to remember that when we say fully staffed, we mean 2 paraprofessionals who are making what barely qualifies as a living wage, in addition to a classroom teacher who is their case manager and providing all of their instruction, working with related service providers such as speech pathologists and occupational therapists, who we love with our whole hearts. So in addition to the fact that students are placed in these classrooms, they are frequently, due to their disability, denied right to their neighborhood school or any sort of choice, and instead bused to wherever they're told they have to go. As I know we're all aware, those buses can be incredibly unreliable for families and students, or kids can be on the buses for a long period of time. In addition to that, because of just the necessity of buses running when they run, kids are denied access to outside of school time activities, which can mean Billy doesn't get to play soccer because soccer is after school, but can also mean Billy's mom doesn't have childcare because she really needed after school programming, but the bus only picks up at exactly 3 o'clock and drops off when it drops off. So my requests are for the board to encourage OSSI to investigate class sizes of DCPS self-contained classrooms, partner with community organizations for better outside of school time options. This should go beyond training to infrastructure that works for our students, because it doesn't matter if you know what to do if you literally cannot do it because of the number of students there. That may be, just my bias creeping in there. And then advocate for better training and better pay for paraprofessionals. AFSCME is going back to the table for negotiations now. Please show up for them, just like many of you showed up for us. Also, if you could keep showing up for us, they do owe us a lot of money. That would be great too. And thank you all so much.
All right, thank you. Laura Fuchs, TJHD Woodson, finishing up my 16th year there. Today I didn't really have time to prepare testimony to the level that I usually like to. It has been a crazy couple weeks, and pretty much all that has to do with governance, so I figured I still had something to say. Since it's something that y'all are trying to take on, which I do appreciate, and hope that that continues to push forward. So under mayoral control, we know that there's just a myriad of problems when basically decisions are getting made kind of like scattered between the mayor, who makes most of them, and then the council, who sometimes steps in, and then the state board that tries to, make sure education doesn't just fall off the map for all those decision makers, which they often, try to just push it to the side. Obviously, under governance, one of our problems is payment. It's not just retro pay. I mean, that was a very blatant, like, oh, you set a deadline and you just flew past it. They do it all the time. People are constantly not getting paid. Our union spends the bulk of its time dealing with people not getting paid appropriately. Central office is the largest central office in the country, bar none, per capita. And it probably still will be, even if these cuts go through, which we'll see what happens with that. But DCPS loves to staff their upper level management, and they hate to staff the people who actually do the work. And so it's not that central office is bad, it's that it's just completely mismanaged. And it's full of directors who apparently don't do anything, and then one person who processes leave of absence requests, which means people go on leave without pay status in the neediest time of their life. Some of them are sick and they're not getting paid because paperwork is not getting processed for 6+ months. It's outrageous. We're following up on things like summer school pay still, right? Why do I still have to call on behalf of my school to the office, to the WTU, who's yep, we have been trying to get the chancellor to get this summer school pay from last summer. Why? I don't understand why they can't do basic things. It then feeds into all the other basics they don't do, from safety training to emergency planning to basically anything. They can't handle it. I know that's not something you could just force on them, but continuing to raise the awareness around that, the basics are not getting done. That's on the mayor's plate, and she just doesn't care. She doesn't care. That's going to then play into social studies standards. So once those get approved, which they likely will, I don't have too many problems with that. they're not going to get implemented because they already don't. Like DCPS already is kind of like, oh, look, standards, that's nice. Like we're going to go do this. Oh, middle school, elementary school, you have standards? Huh, well, it's not test prep, so see ya. Like this is the kind of thing we're dealing with mayoral control. So like definitely still push that, like, because until it's gone, all these other things are going to continue. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Euclides Rengifo Cordova. I am living in Ward 4. I am parent to two kids. One is in high school. The other is in sixth grade, DC International. I am part of the PAIC City Ward and Ward 4. I am a Spanish science teacher in DCPS, Tyler Elementary School. Today I am here for request to DC Board for Education to think about what we are doing with the high school students when they go to between, when they are in high school and go to college, because the majority, the students don't get grant, don't get scholarship, the majority stay flow, especially the member from minority communities, like, you know, Afro-American, Latinos, because they don't have the resources for get a scholarship. The family don't prepare very good them for get a scholarship, and then they don't know where going. The idea is, I want to share with you is, the high school student have alumnus office in his high school where they graduate and maybe have one ID for go back, receive advice for which community college they can do, or a lot of resources they can find in that office. That is very important because the student don't go feel they are by themselves. You know, that age is very dangerous because, you know, when you are 16, 17, or 18 years old, you are very vulnerable for the society, right? And then if they had one ID or one space they can go to talk with advisor, that go to be very fine because we can, you know, bring that support and they can reorientate for get, you know, a scholarship grant or associate degree and be part of the community like a very good professional. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now proceed with a round of member questions, starting with our student representatives. Representative Bernstadt.
Hi, thank you all so much for your testimony. I have two questions. I want to start with Ms. Ellis. You mentioned that there was an increase in seizures, but I didn't catch if you said it or maybe you didn't. Do you know why this is the case?
I don't. I'm a fourth grade teacher, so I don't really feel qualified to answer that. I just know that that was very specific information offered easily. And the direct quote is, DCPS has seen an increase in seizure-related incidents reported among students at all grade levels over the past 1 to 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Fuchs, I have a question. I know the processing time is just like insanely slow because only one person processes the leave of absence requests. If they take that time before it is approved and it is later approved, are they supposed to be retroactively reimbursed for that time?
Yes, but like our current retro where everyone's owed it, right? It's constant follow-up. It's wrong. We follow up again, still wrong, right? It's like constant back and forth that usually the union office and staff have to help facilitate, because when we call, some people get lucky, but most people, no one picks up the phone.
Okay, and then one follow-up question, because it is something similar that we talked about last at the working session about OSSI and bus reimbursement or transportation reimbursement. Does that reimbursement actually happen through DCPS central office, or do you know if they export it to another office to process that.
Sorry, you mean like leave of absence stuff?
Yeah, for reimbursement for those things, or like retroactive pay.
No, I believe all that's processed through DCPS.
Okay,
I
that's
think
me.
like this retro, because it's everyone, it sounds like they might be doing, they claim someone else is doing it. But in our regular ones, they're the ones who are processing.
Okay, those are my only questions. Thank you all for your time.
Representative Washington.
Hi, I wanted to thank you all for coming out tonight and sharing your testimonies. I didn't have any questions, and while this is definitely not as severe, as a former Brent student and current student who attends a school where we don't have a nurse, so it's really dependent on our front office administrators to administer medicine to students and like deal with our health crises. I definitely kind of feel for you with experiencing like allergic reactions or asthma attacks in the past and having adults around who or can administer the medicine but also can't because they don't have the training and don't know how to, so I'm just kind of stuck there with nothing. So yeah, really thank you for your testimony. I didn't have any questions, so I yield the remainder of my time. But yeah, thanks again.
Thank you. Representative Henderson.
Hi, thank you all. First question for Mr. Teneo. You mentioned in your testimony legislation that's been passed in Maryland, Virginia, and also resolutions in South Dakota and Delaware. Do you think those are good examples? Like, are those adequate examples? And then, well, go ahead if you would.
Could you repeat that last part?
Do you think that those examples that you cited are good examples for legislation?
I think that South Dakota is.
South Dakota, okay. And I guess to both you and Ms. Ellis, just so I'm clear, like what you're asking for would be a requirement for training. Is there anything else on top of that or in addition to that that you think should be part of a resolution and hopefully legislation?
Okay, so thank you. Oliver did include with his written testimony two really good examples. I think it's Delaware and South Dakota that the Epilepsy Foundation is trying to kind of use as their model for what their goal is. For what I'm specifically asking for is that school staff get seizure first aid trained. As I shared, it's a 90-minute training. I know because I had to interview for it, I had to do all these things to get to do it, and I've given it many times. It's not a complicated training, and it can easily be done during week 0 when we're all doing all of these trainings. It's really important. Brent is an amazing school. I work there. I love the place. Teachers weren't prepared. We have multiple kids who have seizures at Brent this year, and the first seizure response time was over 7 minutes, and that's how kids die. And so it can be people knowing what to do can change a kid's life. You know, yeah.
All right, thank you. And I'll just note, I'm sure we would all want this to apply to both sectors, training-wise. Ms. Fuchs, in terms of implementing social studies standards, given that they're not tested, what do you think is an effective mechanism for having standards followed through on without testing?
Well, definitely stay without testing them because like in middle school it's tested and it's still not taught. So I mean it hasn't stopped them. And it's tested like, yeah, anyway, so not testing. DCPS tried it, it didn't yield a result. I mean, I think a lot of it is just trying to advocate, try to bring people out to like expose them when they're not, because sometimes when they're exposed, they might walk it back. Empowering teachers to not feel afraid of bringing it up, because like I would basically disrupt PD sessions, just be like, so we're going to talk about how this is racist and why we're not going to do it. And then everyone would talk about it, but like, you know, you got to kind of be willing to be like, yeah, so today we're not on message, y'all, let's go. So I think it's just, that's probably ending impact.
Thank you. Representative Reed.
Okay, so one day I won't be shocked, but I'm shocked of the experience that you had related to seizure protocols, and also to hear Ms. Bertucci's response of, yes, we can also have a nurse, or you can have a nurse, but the nurse doesn't have to administer meds, which there's a push to have nurses in all schools. But if they can't administer meds, that concerns me. So thank you for that. I have a slightly different question, though, but related to medicine, about allergic reactions, because came from a school that we were seizure trained as well as EpiPen trained, with a good faith effort to try to save a child, call police, and then the parent would sign a waiver. So I know it's doable. But can you talk about, is the same thing happening related to like allergic reactions, anaphylaxis? Are people prepared to, if a child has a allergic reaction, can they administer?
So I know at my school people are. There's an AOM on almost every grade level. I know that that's not the case for a lot of schools.
I'm sorry, a what?
Somebody who has gone through all the trainings to administer all the different medications. So
Okay.
everything from an EpiPen to Narcan, like they do it all. That is who the current nurses who are contracted through Children's National, they are trying to pass on the care for my daughter, Ava, to an AOM at our school because they don't feel comfortable, because they don't know her, because it's this endless revolving door of nurses. If we even get a nurse. At Brent, we're supposed to have a nurse 5 days a week.
Yeah.
We don't. We haven't had one yet this week. So I'm sure in other places, in other schools, people are not as highly trained, and kids might be having things, but I don't have that experience.
And listening to that, I'm still concerned, because I'm like, it just depends on if that person's in the building, can they get to the child fast enough? In preparation for the resolution that we could be working on, would it make sense to like at least do the classroom teacher if a child has been identified, and maybe a para in that class, or at least a teacher, to at least maybe cut down on some of that wait time?
It would make sense for everybody who's working with children to know how to use an EpiPen or to give a seizure rescue medication, period. They're not extensive trainings. It's not challenging. It's only scary because people don't know. And once you teach them, they know how to do it and they can handle it. I'm a teacher. It's a lot on our shoulders. I get it. But it's also a lot on our shoulders to have this happen and have no idea what to do.
Absolutely, because 7-minute wait times are just not okay. Yeah, I think I'm done. Thank you.
Representative Goulet.
Well, I want to thank you all for your testimony. I mean, when I was on the health committee, one of the things we were really pushing for on the council, I was the committee director, was getting a 40-hour-week school nurse in every school. But to hear you say that the nurse wasn't trained and wasn't ready for this is alarming to me. I mean, and I agree we should have the training, and obviously we need the nurses to be trained to administer the medicine too. What about athletic trainers and after-school professionals? Is there any training for either coaches or trainers right now, or is it really hit or miss?
So again, I work at Brent. It's an elementary school, so I don't necessarily have athletic trainers, any of that. The after-school programmers are not. As a parent, I've had to advocate for them to have her action plans, to know where her medication is, and if I want them to have medication, I have to provide them with separate medication, because if we have a nurse, she leaves at 4:30, or they leave at 4:30, and if my daughter's in soccer until 6, I either have to be there or I have to have worked with that separate provider. We just had a great training with Hoop Ed. They did an amazing thing. They kept the medication in a lockbox, got everything ready, trained people. So it just depends on the after-school care provider.
Okay, great. Ms. Goddard, you brought up something that's really important to me, which is trying to make sure our children with special needs, that we address the space issues. Right now, we've got the student boundary assessment going on, a study that's going to look at all of that. LaJoy Law is on the task force. She mentioned the need to include this. So if you haven't seen the first couple meetings, they're online. And I would love to work with you through that process, because in Ward 3, space is a big issue. There's school overcrowding, and we need to build in all the communities space for children with special learning needs to be able to have an inclusive setting in their community. So I would love to work with you as we look through the boundary assessment on how we make that happen and we build that space for all the students. So please reach out to me on that, and love to connect you to the working group that's going on right now. And Ms. Fuchs, I just want to thank you for your advocacy on making sure the teachers get paid. You've been an outspoken voice on that. It's totally unacceptable that, I mean, when we have mayoral control, the point is the buck stops at the mayor. And when we're late on paying teachers, we don't meet our promise on the deadline, that's a problem. And to hear that in this day and age, with the technology, where people should be putting time in electronically, that we're still having these problems. What is the holdup? Is it something with the processing of paperwork? Is it OCFO? Is it What do you see as the issue, very quickly, and then I can follow up before.
I mean, I think it's just personnel, frankly. I don't
Okay.
think they're staffing it appropriately, that maybe they're not paying them well enough. I don't know what the holdup is, but like, they should be prioritizing the staffing at that level instead of these really overpaid directors.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Williams.
Thank you, and thank you all for your testimony today. So I'm also a teacher. I teach at a high school level. I've had students with epilepsy, and it wasn't until after an epileptic seizure that then I was trained for future time. So was grateful that I had the training, but like sadly, this thematically is similar to what Representative Goulet said, very alarming. So yeah, I'm happy to support this work and moving forward with figuring out what we need to put in the resolution to make it effective. Ms. Fuchs, I wanted to follow up with what you had kind of said with regards to social studies standards implementation. It feels, from my perspective, that OSSI is putting pressure on the state board, to make a vote in June to be able to pay teachers based on money that's available in the summer to be able to develop resources. I'm curious on your thoughts and reactions to that.
I mean, I think, that could be nice. I've been part of processes run by the same crew that were not positive experiences for me, where basically as a teacher hired, I thought as an expert, I was then just told what to write, and every time I was like, well, I'm not writing that because I don't like it, and I was paid to do this, I'm not putting my name on it, I'm not doing it, you don't have to pay me, I'll watch. Like, it was just ridiculous mess, and I don't know if that was just the person who's running it at the time, or if that's just kind of their attitude towards us as educators, which is that you were paid to do what we tell you, why aren't you doing what we tell you? We're the experts up here in these fancy offices, do what we say. So, I wouldn't personally sign up, but I don't know the people running it, so I mean, with mayoral control, it's just like, it's hard to say, like, and with so many LEAs, I mean, like, yeah, DCPS doesn't do it, I can bet charters aren't doing it either. Like, there's too much, I think, to oversee right now, and not enough people who have any reason to bother overseeing it when all we test is math and English. And then because we have, little star report cards and choice and all these, competition things, that's all they care about. And so social studies, consistently gets pushed to the side. Again, testing will not fix that because they've already tried that road. But, I think it's just these problems are also interrelated and they're also big, that it's like, it is just going to be like following up and trying to call them out, I guess, until the system is fundamentally changed.
In terms of the content of the standards, do you have any significant concerns?
I mean, I think World 2 is too big right now. I'll never get to teach it again, apparently. But it's too large, and I think some of it should go back to World 1, ideally. But, I mean, I think to me, standards really, they can be whatever because the systems are going to do whatever they want. Like we said, like standards aren't curriculum. Curriculum is where the rubber hits the road. And right now, the curriculum is usually way off the standards.
Thank you.
Representative Patterson.
I want to thank everyone for coming down. At this particular time, I don't have a question.
Representative Best.
So, Molly and Oliver, I just want to say thank you. Oliver, I don't know you very well yet, but I'm super proud of you for elevating this issue, but also for doing the research to come up with a solution that we're going to incorporate or think about incorporating. Molly, I promise that I'm going to do everything that I can to ensure that DCPS and DC charters are seizure-safe schools. And I look forward to partnering with you, Oliver, and the state board to hopefully pass a resolution as well as have the right conversations with the right people to ensure that we can pass legislation. Oliver shared some information with me that basically showed that seizure-safe schools have 5 things, and that's training for all teachers, seizure plans for students, a Good Samaritan clause to protect those who are trying to administer life help, ensuring meds are given, as well as educating students on seizures. Do you think that we are, that there's anything else that we should consider as we start to think about what a possible resolution should look like?
Yeah, I do think that you have a big resource in parents, and that's not utilized, parents and family members. If I didn't work in the school, I wouldn't know how little people know, and I wouldn't know to advocate. And I just think that those 5 are definitely the most important, but using what we have parents who want their kids to be safe, and there's an army of us out there.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Representative Chang.
Thank you. I'm sorry I missed your testimony. I did read the written testimony and would love to follow up on a couple points. One, who's been supportive in this process for you so far?
My principal has been amazing, my daughter's teachers, any of the DCPS staff. We're working with DCPS Student Health Services. They've also been supportive. They've completely redesigned the health suite because the nurses have said that they're concerned that if there's another student having an emergency, they can't possibly help my daughter. So they redesigned the health suite. The really only big challenges we've faced are with the nurse contractors. But that's also because I offered training. Teachers came on their own time to get this training. And I don't know, if you don't know there's a training, you can't attend a training. So everybody who knows has been very helpful on the DCPS side. It's just people don't know.
And when you've raised that issue, how has the administration responded to you so far?
When I raised the issue with the nursing team, they've been connecting me with people higher than them. And so we're working with several different people at the DCPS level, but the answer keeps saying, like, this is a contractor. So we can rewrite 504s, we can make these plans to keep these kids safe. You can give all the documentation from every doctor this child has ever seen, but it doesn't matter because the adults who are in charge of the medical care for kids are refusing to do it.
Regarding teacher training around first aid, I'm curious for Ms. Bertocci and Ms. Fuchs, were you offered first aid at any point?
So I shared a little bit of this during my testimony, but I actually have had a student have a seizure in my room and had no idea what to do. Our school has, I didn't know there was an acronym for it, but people who've been through the training to get different types of medical and first aid trainings to the point, we're a big school, we have almost 600 students at Tubman. So we were told by DCPS that now we are deprioritized for getting any more staff members getting the medical training, or at least I have been told that we were told. You know how all that works. So we do have people who have gotten other types of training. It has never been explicitly offered as 90 minutes to know how to help a kid with a seizure, which, I mean, I'm a busy person. I'm not doesn't have 90 minutes busy. But yeah, I think that there are definitely ways to improve in this area in all of our schools.
I'd say at high school we get basically no training at all on health and safety, in my experience. I don't know if other high schools have a different one.
No, they're seeing what you're saying. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Representative Patterson.
I apologize, everyone. As you were speaking, something came up in my mind. I wanted to ask Ms. Ellis, is that correct? I'm thinking about out-of-school time and the people who provide that service. Can you give me a little bit of understanding? Are they trained to provide those type of services? Are there any requirements in that particular area for students who may have seizures and things, and to make it safe for them to go into out-of-school time? Can you give me some background?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think that there is any required training as a whole to be out-of-time provider. I do know that as a parent, I've had to provide all of the action plans for my daughter and all of the medical forms to every single out-of-school time event or experience she's been in, so soccer, basketball, anything that she's been in. As a parent, I've had to do that. And I'm not sure that parents who don't work in DCPS know that that isn't translating. Like, these people are picking our kids up from school. You would think that DCPS would be responsible for giving them the information. But I've never had that information be given to any sort of out-of-school provider.
And that's what I was trying to get to, is because our kids do things outside of school, so none of this information, from your knowledge, and I work in schools as well, is being translated to the out-of-school time, athletics, or anything of that nature whatsoever.
Not that I'm aware of. It could be policy in other schools. I just, from my personal experience as Ava's mom, I've been the one who has had to give all the information to everybody she's with for both before and after care and different sports that she's in.
And you did this personally
I did.
for your
So,
child?
This has been like my hyper focus since she was diagnosed, and so everybody anywhere in Ava's realm knows what to do in case she has a seizure, because I had no idea what to do when she had a seizure, and that's a horribly helpless feeling to have when it's your own child, let alone someone else's child, let alone when it's someone else's child and you have 30 other kids in the classroom. And so just really quick, I want to say, we haven't mentioned this yet, but 1 in 10 people will have a seizure in their life. The 1 in 26 is being diagnosed with epilepsy, but it's 1 in 10 kids. That's like 2 to 3 kids per class who could be having a seizure. And we have all these teachers who have no idea what to do.
And I really appreciate that, because I want to make sure not only that our schools are safe, but that any activity that they have that is school-related or connected is safe as well. So thank you for that. Thank you for giving my time back.
Vice President O'Leary.
I want to start with Mr. Cordoba. The University of the District of Columbia and the UDC's community college is a very valuable resource for students that don't know what they're going to do after. I'm prejudiced because I've been teaching there for 40 years. But, I mean, that's one thing I want you to look into. And are you a DCI or your child is a DCI?
He's in DCI, this international school.
Oh, okay. Because one of my former students is a counselor at DCI, and she's bilingual, and she's got a wonderful story about someone coming to the United States not speaking any English at all and getting a master's degree and blah, blah, blah. But so if you'd look up Anna Martinez at DCI. Ms. Fuchs, you know how I feel about why you haven't gotten paid yet. I hope that you were one of the ones that did, but it's totally unacceptable. It's almost criminal that teachers are praised on one hand and punched in the head on the other hand. And just please keep up the fight, and you're not alone. And I'd like to just talk to both of you about, Ms. Ellis, in your remarks you said it is irresponsible of the school board to put kids like Ava in danger. I wish that we could do something besides a resolution that would keep your daughter safe. But we're not the ones to blame. We are going to be the ones that are going to raise the voice so that the council and the mayor will know about it. And we really appreciate your testimony. And Representative Best is in the forefront of this, but we're all going to be supportive of this much needed legislation which needs to be done. And the other thing is trainers are trained. Certified athletic trainers are trained and equipped with everything, any kind of a medical emergency. I just wanted to bring that up because that's a big difference. Like if your daughter was an athlete, she wouldn't be in danger of not being serviced by the trainers.
She's also only 7, so she's not out of school that has a athletic trainer. And if that athletic trainer calls in sick that day or isn't there, that's where the emergencies happen. When someone who's trained is there, amazing. The kids are safe. That's not how kids die. Kids die when there's somebody who has no idea what to do, or it's a teacher helpless in a classroom with 30 other kids and can't leave.
Thank you.
President Thompson.
I'm going to thank the entire panel. I do my best never to speak for other members, but I'm going to assume that Vice President O'Leary brought up the trainers because people testified in front of us and said there weren't enough of them. And I think the point he's making is shared with you all that there need to be more people So I want to be very clear about that because that's work the board has said they were going to follow up on. Thank you for actually connecting Mr. Cordoba to a person. My sister's a DCI graduate, so I know both the beautiful things about DCI and the beautiful mess that DCI can be. So I appreciate that. I will say, you said there were 1 in 10. I would be the 1 in 10. I was a kid who had seizures growing up in Ward 7, and DC General saved my life on more than one occasion. I absolutely do agree with my vice president when I say we will be the people who do work on this. I also agree with the members who raised the praise and said thank you for bringing a solution and awareness, because a lot of times people don't have a good solution until they have experienced the problem themselves. So thank you all for that, because you could have just said, I'm going to opt out, I'm going to do something different, but you worked on it, brought us a solution, and we'll continue to move that forward. Ms. Bertucci and Ms. Fuchs, I don't necessarily have questions because I think the testimonies were very clear. I don't know if, with my minute and a half left, if there was anything that people did not get a chance to cover that they want to be able to speak to. But I want to be clear about our to-do items in our list.
This is so silly. I'm so sorry. I didn't get to introduce myself because I was so rattled by the testimony before me. I'm so sorry. But it is kind of important because my last name is Bertocchi. Just as a heads up, everyone. Hey, Sam Bertocchi. Nice to meet all of you.
Thank you, because I've been saying it wrong for a very long time. All right. Anything else?
Thank you for all your job, because I know you are involved in the community. Especially, I saw, Represent Jackie Pasterson, Represent Pfizer, Ward 4. Also, I want to maybe explain the student high school. I am talking about all minority community, because they feel comfortable in high school because they stay 4 years, but it's different when we send to the student to community college because they don't know nobody. And then if we have a vice's office in the high school and the place they was the last 4 or 5 years, that go to be more, maybe confident for the student.
We would like to thank you all for your testimony today. You all can have a seat, and we will call our next round of public witnesses. Sion DeBose Palmer, LaGeorgia Callahan, Jeanette Staten, Ruth Wattenberg, Anisha Perry. We will start with Sion. Please speak into the mic. It is already on.
Okay. Hello. All right, I'm about to start. Hello, my name is Sion. I am 21 years old, born and raised in Washington, D.C., and I am a 2020 DCPS graduate and the lead organizer with the Black Swan Academy. I am here today to talk about school safety. True school safety is not about increasing SROs and school policing. It's making sure every student has the necessities to be mentally, emotionally, and physically prepared to thrive and be active catalysts in their community. I know some of you may be thinking, why does she care? I care because I have been fighting for enhanced school safety since I was a sophomore in high school. 3 classes have graduated since then, and we're still asking for the same thing. I began my fight for improved school safety with the fact that I've seen firsthand what the lack of care and support leads to. My brothers are both products of the school to prison pipeline. During that time, my family was faced with financial hardships, housing instability, and being impacted by CFSA, splitting up our family. Instead of our communities and the schools meeting our mental needs, housing needs, and safe place to truly be kids, my brothers was pushed further into the system. This is a prime example of why we should move beyond school policing. The School Safety Enhancement Act of 2023 increases schools' capacity to form authentic relationships with students, address their immediate social and emotional needs, intervene in and de-escalate conflict by providing the resources to hire and train school safety directors, assistant directors, and school safety teams. We can't keep relying on the boys in blue we can't keep relying on the boys in blue because they have proven they can't be trusted to keep our youth safe. Winston Churchill wrote, "Those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it." The council had the right approach the first 2 times they decided to phase out SROs. My ask to you all is to learn from the history of school safety and invest in what keeps youth mentally, emotionally, and physically safe and happy. And I believe the School Enhancement Act could be the start. I want to point out that schools have always expressed concerns around safety, despite the increased and consistent presence of SROs. We are talking about these issues as if it's new. It's not. Y'all have heard from y'all have tried for decades to address safety with more police and more police training, and it hasn't worked. Council understand the harm that police cause Black, brown, and youth with disabilities. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Georgia Callahan. I'm a youth organizer with Black Swan Academy, and I am 15 years old, and I attend Anacostia High School. I'm here to talk to you all about school and community safety. It's something that my community peers and I struggle with every day. One day, my cousin was walking home with her 10-month-old baby brother. There was a shooting, and my cousin was unfortunately shot. She did not know that the bullet hit her, so she kept walking. When she got home, her dad saw blood, and then they found out she had a bullet in her. The bullet is still inside her to this day. Gun violence changed my cousin's life because she's now traumatized, and she will never forget that day. She doesn't want to talk about what happened. This affects me because now I think that if I was there, and what if somebody passed away? I see violence every day in and around my school and my neighborhood. In 2021, nearly 80% of DC residents live within a half a mile of a homicide, and about 2 out of 3 of DC residents live within a half a mile of multiple homicides. Young people who witness violence repeatedly can be mentally and emotionally impacted. Yet the community remains ill-equipped to address the trauma and PTSD. The Black community continues to carry. So my asks to you are: increase access to free and quality rehab programs, increase the number of violence interrupters involved in safe patches and directly supporting our schools, fund free shuttles to and from schools, fund community-led trainings to strengthen our community skills around meditation, conflict resolution, de-escalation techniques, and healthy coping mechanisms. Establish and fund for 24-hour safe spaces in the community, including recreation centers. Increase support for OST programming that provides safe spaces for Black youth. I hope you'll work on policies and funding to help with this. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, President Thompson, Vice President O'Leary, and members of the State Board of Education. I am Jeanette Staten, Ward 8 PLE member for PAVE. Thank you for your partnership in advocating for the needs of our schools and students. I am testifying tonight about community safety and safe passage. 1 in 3 high school students reported persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness, while suicide rates for young people rose 57% in a decade. Suicide rates among youth aged 10 to 24 years increased by 57% between 2007 and 2018, and there were more than 6,600 estimated deaths by suicide in 2020, in this age group. And this was written by the U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, in his mental health advisory. I can't help but associate our children's sadness and fear with their unsafe passage to school and to their out-of-school time activities. As a Ward 8 PLE board member, community safety is not just important to my ward, it's important for every ward. Each ward has children that deserve a safe commute to and from school, as well as a safe and violence-free community. Councilmember Trayon White Sr. stated that public safety is a vital part of the quality of life in his Ward 8 6-month progress report for 2022. Councilmember White has allocated millions to the Public Safety Initiative. I have seen progress and the council members' hard work come to fruition. One morning around 6:45 a.m., as I'm walking to the Congress Heights Metro, I was greeted by friendly faces that were alert and ready to ensure my safe passage as I headed to work. I felt safe when I saw a reduction in disruption and violence. Again, millions of dollars were allocated for this Safe Passage program. However, the next step I would like to see is equitable distribution of the programmatic services. For example, Wards 2 and 7 lack a decent amount of safe passage technicians. Communities across the city need to see those neon vests. City leaders must support this with an understanding that this effort will look different for every ward because it's about equity and not equality regarding this matter. I would be interested in receiving additional information regarding the Safe Passage technicians' core hours, how they are recruited, and how the city will ensure retention and mitigate attrition. As ward representatives on the State Board of Education, I invite you to join me in seeking these numbers and in advocating for increased implementation of the Safe Passage program. Program sustainability is important, and every quadrant of the city should benefit from the program. In the words of Councilmember Trayon White Sr., public safety is complicated, but not complicated enough to where results can't be made. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Anisha Marie Perry. I'm a sophomore at Anacostia High School and a youth organizer with the Black Swan Academy. I'm testifying for low barrier programs, confidential mental health screenings, mandatory therapists, and non-mandated reporters, and access to varying mental health and well-being services. I think there should be more social workers in schools and also having different counselors in schools, not just having one of the two focusing on everything at once. I also think there should be more social workers in schools so kids could have more time to talk with them. Since I was in elementary, I've had social workers. I've always only had 30 minutes with them, and everything I had going on was never always said. I'm now in the 10th grade because I never had that much time with them. I just shut down and tell them there's nothing going on because I feel like it's a waste of time and I can't get everything out. Also, when I needed them the most, they were always busy because I started to shut down in middle school. I was going through so much and I began to cut myself. I'm now 16 in high school and I still cut myself and develop anger issues. I get so angry and don't know how to control it because I feel like my social worker doesn't have enough time to talk. I just recently told her about me getting raped and the toxic abuse household that I'm in, but I used to be in. But I still push it to the side with her and don't talk about it. Imagine if I go through this or feel this way. Think about how other youth that's not speaking up feel. I feel like social workers sometimes don't have enough time to get down to the bottom of the problem. So I feel like it's a waste of time. Imagine how many youth feel this way. Also, youth that have a certain health care is not able to get a social worker. That is inexcusable. Any youth in any school should be able to access a social worker. The decrease in youth mental health and the caretaker is ridiculous. According to the NCS, the most prevalent mental health among children were anxiety disorder 32%, behavior disorder 19%, mood disorder 14%, and substance use disorder 11%. People with Medicaid cannot access treatment for their mental health. Mental health access for treatment for any insurance should be available because some people cannot afford other insurance. For DC children enrolled in Medicaid Managed Health Program organization, MCOs, nearly all 88% of those with a diagnosed mental health disorder did not receive treatment for it in fiscal year 2010. Us youth are mentally struggling, us youth are screaming for help silently, and there's not enough social workers to hear our cries. So I'm speaking of us youth, increase our social workers and decrease the rate of youth dying. Thank you for listening to my testimony.
Hello. Thank you. There are wait one second. There are two huge problems with the proposed secondary history standards, which is my focus. First, the failure to center democracy, and second, the collapse of the world history standards. First, let's focus on democracy. Think what's in the headlines. Voting rights are being scaled back, election districts are being gerrymandered, voting stations on campuses and in communities of color are being shut down. A defeated president conspires to stay in power. A superpower invades a neighboring country. These are today's headlines. If you don't know history, this is normal, and this is how things get normalized. If we don't want our students to find this normal, if we want standards that are a model for others, we need to meet this moment with standards that allow students to see through the headlines, understand why our democracy matters and what threatens it or strengthens it. These don't. Students and citizens who understand how voting rights were taken away from Black Americans and kept away for a century will react more knowingly than others when states gerrymander and shut down voting sites. Students and citizens who know the history that led to World War II understand what happens when superpowers are not stopped. They will get, even if they don't agree, why so many think that the success of Ukraine is central. Students and citizens who understand how Mussolini and Hitler took power will be quicker to get why it's a big deal when a president refuses to concede, promotes hatred of minority groups, and cheers violence at political rallies. Students who know that the Irish immigration starting in 1820 sparked mob violence will understand that over time, America's views of who's an outsider has changed. Students who have studied the arc of American immigration know about nativism, and that nonetheless, the U.S. stands out in the world as a nation of immigrants. That does not come through. History teaches through analogy. It's why people say history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. If we know the history, we can see the analogy, we can hear the rhyme. In their book, How Democracies Die, Stephen Levitsky and Daniel Ziblatt ask, is our democracy in danger? They feel dread is their answer. They say answering such a question requires stepping back from daily headlines and breaking news alerts to widen our view, drawing lessons from the experiences of other democracies around the world and across history. It's comparative and it's history. The U.S. evolved over history from an oligarchic democracy of property to white men to the world's largest multiracial democracy. That's central to our history. How did it happen? What made possible the Voting Rights Act, the Immigration Act? What got us to these places? Familiarity with those trajectories allows students and citizens to recognize the rhymes, good and bad, so we can recognize danger signs and have enough faith to participate. The authors say the promise of history is that we can find the rhymes before it is too late. This, I think, should be your line in the sand. You should not approve these unless they incorporate a clear trajectory of standards that build the comparative and historical understanding of democracy and our multiracial democracy, how rare they have been, still are, how
Thank
it
you,
works, the principles
Ms.
that underlie it,
Wattenberg.
what makes it strong, what threatens it. And I won't have time for my second point, but someone can ask me about the world history standards. Thanks. I'm sorry for such a switch.
Thank you.
topic.
Thank you all. We will now turn to our representatives for their first or for a round of questioning, for a round of questions. Before we do, we would just like to ask all the panelists, if you have not submitted your testimony in writing to the State Board at SBOE at dc.gov. My brain just, please do so, because we'd like to add them to our website and as a part of the public record. We'll start with our student representatives. Representative Bernstadt.
Okay, thank you all for your time. I have two questions. The first is for the first person who testified. I didn't catch your last name. Sion, right? Okay. Thank you so much for your testimony. I agree with everything you said. I was wondering if when we talk about investing in what keeps youth safe, there's anything you feel like we're really missing in this conversation. I know we talk a lot about like eliminating SROs and things like that, which I think is a really valuable step. But what else do you think we need to open up this conversation to that you think people in this space often neglect to think about?
I think a lack of like trainers. I think that comes up a lot. Teachers, even like admin or those that they call behavioral techs or whatever it may be, they have like lack of training to deal with like de-escalation or mediation or like a couple people will talk about like when youth are going through something like mentally, like they're not prepared to deal with it, and so yeah, it's a lot of conversation about like and counselors and out of school programs and in school programs and things like that.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Callahan, you mentioned increasing access to free rehab programs. Are there any programs you think exist now that we should look at this model, or do you think that's something that the district is lacking entirely?
I think, I don't know none right now, but like, I think the district is lacking.
Okay, thank you very much. And my last question is for Ms. Perry. I might have misheard you, but I think you mentioned something, if I'm correct, about like having unmandated reporters, so people that don't have to report everything. What do you think the benefit to that is, or did I mishear you?
The benefit to mandated reporters and not having people to like always report stuff like their families and stuff like that is that the fact of when like a kid goes to a social worker and actually feels like confidential with their social worker, they feel like that they can tell that social worker anything, and then if the social worker go back to the family and if the child does not tell the social worker everything, that child could be going through something physically or mentally at home and could get abused mentally and physically at home. And if the social worker does not tell the family, they won't have to go through things like that.
Okay, thank you all so much for your time. Those are my questions.
Representative Washington.
Hi, thank you all for sharing your incredibly personal stories. They truly touch my heart, and I'm so glad you all came out to testify. Ms. Callahan, you shared the story of your cousin. I was wondering what resources or what ideal resources could have been in place that would have better helped both of you all in that moment, even after you all got home. And I believe either you or Sion might have mentioned having 24-hour rec centers open. So what do you think would be necessary to have in those centers to aid the public?
Therapy and like just talking to a social worker. And what was the second question?
The 24-hour rec center one. What resources could be there to help?
It's not just rec centers, but a lot of our youth that's in my organization, a lot of them struggle with displacement, or a lot of them struggle with things that go on at home where they aren't like safe to be there and they don't have anywhere else to go. A lot of programs in DC, like social groups and places like that, ask for parent contacts and like ask to contact your parents before you're able to be in a certain place. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. And so we're asking that there are places where youth like 16 and older, or like youth that don't have that like parental guidance, can go in without having to worry about getting a signature from their parent or things like that.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Representative Henderson.
Hi, thank you all for your testimony. Thank you for bringing up the relationships that public safety has to a broader set of issues, including housing and economic security, food security, and the like. I think we want to make sure that we don't silo this conversation outside of that. Ms. Callahan, you were asking for more safe passage workers, more violence interrupters, but not SROs. Could you speak a little bit more to like what makes you comfortable with the violence interrupters and the safe passage workers, but not the officers?
I feel like safe passage workers, they don't like make me scared because like I can actually have a bond with them. But like SROs, they have like weapons on them, and it makes me feel like I have to like do the right thing every time I'm around them. So like I feel like safe passage is better for me because I won't feel like trapped or like feel like I have to be a certain way just because I'm around this type of person.
All right, thank you for sharing that. Representative Wattenberg, I hope you will share your written testimony with us. Would you care to briefly, like very briefly, say the world history piece, like highlight, top line, very brief?
I'll just read it, which is, so the second point is on world history, and the current standards, which are very old now, were a great innovation at the time. It's important to know, at that time there had been contentious debates for decades about how much of traditional Western civ should get dropped in order to teach about a broader group of world civilizations. And the people who wrote these standards said, we're getting out of that debate, we're going to do both. They added a year to world history and divided it across all the different civilizations, so it had a huge impact on the world and on the U.S.
Excuse me, Ms. Wattenberg.
The very best standards.
Yeah, if you could talk into the
She's
mic.
interrupting you so you can talk into the
I'm
mic so
sorry.
we can hear it.
Okay. They were, I followed this at the time, they were among the very best standards at the time. The proposed standards dropped that commitment to teach about the world in favor of a grab bag of world history and culture. You can study Mesopotamia or the Indus Valley, Rome or Greece, China or Persia, the Mongols or the Ottomans. But we owe our students more than that, and it is really a terrible loss that these drop that. And I think there's ways to deal with it, and I hope that you make that point and don't adopt them until they're fixed. Thanks.
Thank you. Representative Reed.
Good evening. So, LaGeorgia and Anisha, I was at your school today and talking to students related to safety. So I have two questions. First question is, in that room, I asked a very direct question related to SROs. Actually, I asked three questions, but one was, do you want them in school? Do you not want them in school? And then, or just outside the school? And in that group of 20, 2 students said yes to wanting them in school. The bulk said no. The majority agreed safety precautions outside the school. I'm curious to hear from you how to balance the perspectives of your peers, as well as some adults, who are saying they should be there, and then folks who are saying they should not be there. And I have a follow-up question if we have time.
To balance that, I feel like if you're going to have SROs in schools, that there should be like this, like stuff like de-escalators and like other things like more safe passages and stuff like that inside the schools, but also de-arm the SROs so that way they're not walking around our school buildings with weapons, and we have to feel like that we gotta surrender to them every time we walk past them.
Thank you for that. Did you have anything to add? Okay, I'm getting my second question. Trying to paint a quick picture. So it was October 2020, outside of Anacostia High School, after school hours, some young ladies came up fighting with knives. The community tried to engage because we were like, we keep us safe. We don't want to call the police. We cannot get those young ladies to de-escalate, including with their parent there trying to assist us with de-escalating. The only thing that made them stop was when the police lights arrived and they ran away, and thankfully nobody was hurt, students and adults. How do you think we build up that respect of no one would have had to call the police? We also had a violence interrupter right there. So I'm trying to balance out of like, how do we build up a culture of either you respect the adults who are trying to assist you, maybe they don't know there's a violence interrupter, versus we have to call the police, because it seemed like those young ladies respected the police over a bunch of adults trying to assist them. So what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say it was more respect. I would probably say it was out of fear or trauma. But I'm also not them. Yeah. But I know me personally, if I saw police, I'm gonna run too because I don't do them. But it just, I do also know that me from personal experience, like been in a moment that is like a moment of like not really knowing what you're, I mean, I'm not gonna say everybody, but me personally, I've been in a moment not knowing what's really going on. because you're angry or whatever. But yeah, I don't really think it was out of more so respect, because I do think they have respect for other people. I just think it was out of fear.
Thank you. Representative Goulet.
I just want to thank you all for coming in. Thank you for your powerful testimony on these issues. I mean, we had the previous panel discuss this as well, and we looked at the issues they talked about, trying to get all the parties in the room. And the council's putting together this working group, which I think could be really valuable if we put balanced perspectives on the working group and not have a predetermined outcome for it. I know people come into it with different ideas of what the right answer may be, but if everybody listens to each other and learns in that working group, we may actually come up with a model that works better for everyone here in the city. And I think that would be hopefully something that we strive for, because I think oftentimes all of us sometimes have a predetermined outcome on something, and then if we listen to each other and we learn from it, we may come up with something completely different. So hopefully that'll be the route that goes. I guess we'll see. I love what you have talked about, because I've been reading articles lately just talking about the increase in depression amongst youth, anxiety, and just anger, all stemming from the pandemic and just the social issues we've seen, since Trump became president, with Floyd's murder, all of it just weighing heavily on people, and COVID being part of that. And I love both what PAVE has advocated for this budget cycle, and the Black Swan Academy, your Black Youth Agenda report. The three issues just stand out: safe passages, which we heard about tonight, making sure kids can get to and from school; school-based mental health, which I know PAVE is trying to get money back for, that's been reduced from the budget and we need to get back; and then out of school time, which is one of my top priorities. I think if we can get youth in positive activities from 3:30 until 6 o'clock, it's going to make a huge difference in reducing violence and giving a positive thing each day. So I just want to thank you all for your work. I hope PAVE keeps fighting. You made great gains in out of school time and school-based mental health, but we got more to do, hopefully on second reading of the budget. So thank you there. And to my Ward 3, former member here, who I'm trying to fill her shoes, thank you for your really great testimony on this. I can't wait to sit down with you, Ruth, and go through it. And I think we really do need to spend the time to get this right. It's been difficult to focus on it, with the budget being such an issue and the reductions in schools across the city being such a focus. I think social studies standards deserve the time to get it right, and I want to see how close we are. I think OSSE's made improvements, but your focus on world history is so important, and on democracy, which we see threatened across the country with everything from trying to discourage people from voting to trying to ban books and things of that sort. So I can't wait to sit down and talk with you on this, Ruth, and we'll hopefully do that in the next week. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Representative Williams.
Thank you. Ms. Stanton, thank you for your clear testimony around just equitable access to safe passage around the city. I think that, something that we're still working on in Ward 1 as well, and something that I think we need to figure out with greater precision. With regards to other people's testimony, it really kind of is just super concerning for me that we don't have enough school counselors and licensed mental health professionals in our schools. It's something that I know the council is working on. It's something that I know is a huge need. It's something that I see every day. It's something that I know caseloads are too high. So I just really appreciate y'all being here, and for things to change, we're going to need for people to keep speaking up, and to continue to build a pipeline that isn't just short-circuited in response to the pandemic, but can really be built over years and into the decade to come. Ms. Walberg, I really appreciate your impassioned plea around democracy. I've been teaching government in the district for over a decade. For the last 7 years, I've been teaching DC history class and U.S. government, and this year I taught AP government. And for my U.S. government class, every year I start with looking at the democracy index around the world and how democracy has declined, and how it is an exception around the world and not a rule. So I would encourage the board to, and I have communicated this concern directly to Dr. Grant and to Aussie, and I want them to have a good faith effort in responding to that. But I do think that that is a serious thing that we could make sure that if they want us to approve them, then they should make this change. I mean, we talk a lot about activism. We're the District of Columbia. We've fought for so many different achievements throughout our history, and this would be something that I would really feel proud of them being able to make this change. So I hope that they'll be collaborative in doing that. Yeah, I just wanted to say that, and I appreciate you all for being here. So thank you so much. I have no further questions.
Representative Patterson.
Thank you. Ms. Perry, your comments speak to my spirit. My son went through a lot of things that you described in your testimony, including the cutting. And so I don't want to rehash some of the things that you said because I think you were just so powerful in your comments. But I do want to follow up with you personally because it's unconscionable that my son was saved and helped because he had the right resources in place. And here you are at Anacostia in my ward, and you don't. And that you're here right now in all your power, speaking on this and advocating on this is just so important. And I just really want to commend you first and foremost for doing that, to bring this issue and inequities about how resources are allocated throughout this city. My son attends school outside the ward, so there was a lot of resources there for him. You're in our ward, and they're not there for you, and that hurts my heart, truly hurts my heart. I look forward to following up with you. Ms. Callahan, thank you for what you said about when you differentiated between SROs, safe passage, and violent interrupters and how they make you feel and how you can communicate and build relationships. I want to stay on violent interrupters for just a second. I want to ask you, the violent interrupters that you've engaged in, are they allowed in your school?
I don't really know.
Okay. And the reason I asked that question, Ms. Callahan, is this. A lot of times we talk about what happens on the exterior of the schools and stuff like that, but violent interrupters are able to take what's happening in the community and stop a lot of things coming inside the school. And I just want to know how you would feel if you had that access to them inside the schools, that they built relationships inside the school, knew different groups, because they also talk to parents. And that's another aspect that the other SROs don't do that, neither the safe passage. Safe passage gets you back and forth. But just real quick, because we only have 28 seconds, how you would feel about being able to have safe passage, not safe passage, but violent interrupters have more access to inside the school.
I feel like it would be better because, like, I hear a lot of stuff going on in school, and it's like, I keep it to myself because, like, it's not really an adult I could talk to because certain adults let certain stuff happen inside the schools. So, like, if violent interrupters was there, I would be able to tell them about the stuff that I'm hearing, and they would understand and, like, de-escalate the situation before it actually happens.
Thank you so much for your comments.
Thank you. Representative Best?
A few days ago, I think it was 2 days ago, I was walking to the wharf with my friend and her 4-year-old son. As we were walking by the military college in Southwest where we saw an officer. Her son asked why was the officer there. And I said, he's there so no one who's supposed to be in there can walk in. He then asked me, well, if they try, will he make them dead? And that's a 4-year-old, and I can't ignore that. I've always had a lot of mixed feelings about this topic. I've been at schools where SROs have taken weapons off of students. That was gun and knives. I'm also a black man who has experienced profiling myself. My question is the same question I asked before. How do we make sure our students feel safe while making sure they are safe? And what's the balance? What's missing and what are those gaps that you all see? So that's for anybody at this table, regardless of what your testimony was earlier.
Well, I just want to make a point as they think about it, which is there's two words that I'm not hearing any of the representatives say when they kind of report back out what they're hearing. And the biggest thing is these young ladies don't feel cared for. You just can't put bodies in positions and they not care. We know that most people are getting into these positions because it's a paycheck or it's convenient. Another thing they're not hearing is they need psychological safety. And so that's where that needs to start. There needs to be training on psychological safety because number one, we know that they're being talked to and not talked with. And you can hear it in their testimonies. And so as you keep talking about resources, those resources need to know that they're people and that they have minds of their own. So I'll just start with that.
I would say that once like I said, instead of if y'all didn't want to take SROs out because you feel like that it would still be a safety hazard because of the type of places that we live in, I would say de-arm them. Coming into a school building with a whole bunch of especially school buildings like Ward 8, Ward 7, as I understand, is in between in between hoods, and it's going to be a fight that probably breaks outside of the school. De-arm that officer so that way that child does not feel like that officer is not going to harm them in any type of way with any type of weapon. Let that officer know, have trainings that the officer can understand that they can only de-escalate the situation and break the situation up. They cannot use any type of weapons or harm that student.
Thank you.
Representative Chang.
Thank you. I'm going to follow up on this point. I'm really curious to hear from the students who or what institutions you've turned to, or let me ask it this way. With whom do you feel cared for? Either inside or outside of the school.
I could say I feel more careful outside of the school. Inside of the school, it's only maybe 1 or 2 times that somebody may come up to me and ask me. But on multiple occasions, I'm always greeted by the safe passage outside of school. I remember one time, and nobody inside the school will help you out or do anything or talk to you about anything. But when I'm outside of school and I be having an attitude or something, and the safe passage would ask me, "Are you okay?" I remember one time I was getting out the car, the safe passage gave me an umbrella because I ain't want my head yet. And one time my mom's car, she had to put coolant in the car. One of the safe passage men walked down there and was like, "Are y'all okay?" I mean, she was already done, she knew she was doing what she was doing. But the fact that he even took the time out to walk down there and make sure that she was okay, and it was two deans that walked straight past us and didn't ask if we okay. 2 deans and the AP that walked past us and didn't ask was we okay at all or needed help.
I feel cared for outside of school, and with one person inside school, my math teacher.
Your math teacher, is that what you said? And what are the spaces outside of school where you feel cared for?
Only Black Swan Academy.
Okay.
I feel cared for with my math teacher because before we start doing the work, she have these questions for us how was your weekend and how was your weekend and do you want to talk about something, and when she get the time, she'll go over it, and then she'll have one-on-ones with us to she'll have one-on-ones with us depending on what we wrote on the paper. So if we said we've been through a lot that weekend, she will pull us, and then she will have our social worker, Ms. Washington, in there with us to talk to us about what had happened.
And may I actually follow up there? What is it that your math teacher does that makes you feel cared for in school?
It's a lot. She checks up on us. She teaches us how to express our feelings and she teaches us and yeah.
I'd love to meet her.
Vice President O'Leary.
All right, I'm a teacher and I'm giving you a test. We've got little less than 3 minutes for the three young ladies. I want you to think about it a little bit, and then I want you to give us the answers, because I think these answers are important for everyone who's listening, and especially I want to remind you to please submit your testimony. Okay, if you haven't done that yet, because I mean, you all did a fabulous job of presenting your testimony, and all you have to do is send it. The question is, what are 3 things that would make you feel safe in school? And I know someone's already out, but I want you to think, what are 3 things that would make you feel safe in school? I want you to think about it for a second. I'm watching the clock right now. Just 3 things that would make you feel safe in school. Okay, who wants to go first?
When I was in school,
Yes.
I feel like having like non-mandated reporting, because it was too many times where I was reported to CFSA because of stuff I said to the council, to the people. More like programming, like stuff outside of school, like stuff like Black Swan, but inside the school building, or something like that. And better Black history classes would have been lit. But just knowing, and then also knowing like that people in school actually like listen to us and care about us and our education, but also our mission.
Great. You gotta answer. Ms. Callahan, you have to answer.
One is mandated reporters, people that's not gonna tell me to my mommy when I tell them about something. 2 is more people that like in my community, around the school, but I could feel safe around, or like giving the teachers the training of like social workers, like because like you can clearly see like they are caring for us anyway, and why not give them the training of a social worker and pay them like a social worker? I mean, we'll pay them actually like up their pay and stuff like that, and more like funding for like what's it called, athletic stuff like sports.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Callahan, you got 15 seconds.
I would say better bonds with adults, safe passage or violence interruptions inside of schools, and
All right.
President Thompson.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies.
No worries. I want to, of course, thank the whole panel. I also, so I have a couple separate thoughts. I have a couple separate thoughts. So thought 1, I do appreciate the students from Black Swan coming out tonight, because when I talked to you all, my hair was not that different. It was just back. But people act like I'm in witness protection when my hair changes. So when I talked to you all outside of the Democratic meeting, I said, we're having a meeting on school safety, and I think we invited you all, and you all were like, we should be there, but we didn't know because all the things going on. So I'm glad you showed up anyway. So thank you for coming, because I recognize that we had that conversation. I also really appreciate Ms. Stanton, you reframing, I think, the conversation I think that was a really helpful question. I know for me as a member, I ask questions to better understand. So thank you for pushing us on the frame from which we should be asking questions. And then I want to acknowledge your testimony about safe passage and the fact that it's currently budget season. I'm also watching the safe passage numbers very closely. And I do know that we had an increase in dollars, but it is not an increase in programming. It's a good increase because we're paying people more. And we all know the cost of all things are more. But we do need more programming. And I know that that's something that not only have I heard like from people in my ward, people who show up here, I actually heard that I think from you. You came to my budget session and you talked about the programs and the number of hours, right? So somebody asked the question to our panel earlier, like, have you heard, like, or do you feel like we need more hours in Safe Passage? And I distinctly remember you were one of the people who talked about coming out of Anacostia in the evenings, not feeling safe when there were like basketball games and stuff. There were lights, but the people were gone. And so I say that to say, I appreciate you all showing up. I appreciate you all continuing to show up because it helps us connect the dots and learn from you all. And we are building on every time you say those things to us. So thank you all for that. Representative Wattenberg, I had no doubt that you were going to show up. And so I thank you for your testimony, and I will yield the rest of my time.
Thank you all for testifying this evening. And again, as a reminder, please submit your testimonies via email to SBOE@dc.gov, and that way we can add them to our public record. At this time, we will call our next set of panelists. Thank you all. Scott Goldstein, Nadia Roberts, Gabrielle Alston, Quimaya Hayward, are there any other individuals that we may have missed earlier that are here that would like to testify? Come on. Okay, we will start with Scott.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about teacher retention, but I have to start with some reaction to this conversation around public safety. Today, a student was shot and killed outside the school that I used to teach at Roosevelt High School. Our team at Empower Ed was on our way to McFarland Middle School at exactly the time the shooting happened for a wellness workshop that we were supposed to conduct there. My two girls were locked down at the school across the street while this happened. Listening to the young people today, I want to emphasize again, this shooting happened outside of the school building at 2:30 p.m. when students were supposed to be inside the school building as someone drove by the school. There was a shooting outside of Coolidge and Wells Middle School that happened outside the school building. In 2019, there were shootings at Aton, Henley, Turner Elementary. All of them happened outside the school building. Last year, there was a shooting at Anacostia where a bullet pierced the door. Outside the school building is where the shots came from. So I wish we would get away from the distraction of this conversation around just what is happening with police or not with police inside the school building. These shots are happening in our community, and they're happening directly in front of our school buildings, and we have to do something about the much deeper problem that's happening in our community and the violence that's occurring there. And we have to stop putting it on these young people to make the police more popular or to solve something for the police department when these young people need solutions to much deeper issues that are going on, mental health supports and everything else that we've talked about today. I'll change topics now to teacher retention. I'm really happy to report that in the DC Council budget that was approved just yesterday in the first vote, that a flexible scheduling pilot was included in this, which will pilot 6 DC public schools and 6 public charter schools to be selected by OSSI by March of next school year. Most of the pilots will take place in school year 24 and 25, and from the overwhelming response we've gotten to the email we put out about this news from principals and teachers about wanting to participate in this, I think the support and demand will grow from there. Even as we make progress there, we have to pay careful attention to other things. I don't have time to go into all of this, it's in my written testimony, but combined with the educator workforce report that OSSI already puts out, the DC Council also included language to require DCPS to include an exit survey every year. That comprises now most of what you have requested in your DC State Data Warehouse Amendment Act, with a couple gaping holes. One is that we do not have charter schools included in any of that, whether from the OSSE report or now from the new council language, in terms of why people are leaving. So that's something that I think that you all should address in the gap between what you put forward and what the council has now done. We also have to address some small things about the questions they ask, including about why people leave and effectiveness. And I also think that I would love the State Board to focus on the gaps between the Data Warehouse Amendment Act and what is not presented in the OSSE educator workforce and what has already been passed by the council, to make sure that is holistic. We also want to make sure that your committee can take on the impact evaluation and adequately report on alternatives and adequately address the disruption that is caused by standardized testing, which is also a cause of teacher turnover. A lot more to say about that, but thank you for your time.
Okay, so housekeeping note. Ms. Butler stepped away. I will give you all a grace period of 15 seconds before I interrupt you, but I will interrupt you. So please do not put me in the position to interrupt you. I prefer not to. Thank you.
Good evening, President Thompson, Vice President O'Leary, and members of the State Board of Education. My name is Gabrielle Austin. I live in Ward 8. My son Gabriel is a rising 6th grader at Stateman's Academy for Boys, and Gavin is a rising pre-K4 at Ingenuity Public Charter School. I currently serve as a paid Ward 8 PLE board member. I want to thank you for your current partnership and leadership around education issues in our city. I would like to address the mental health awareness crisis in our schools and communities. Today I'm testifying because as a single mom who deals with depression, anxiety, and PTSD, all while parenting children with different learning challenges, it's been a constant struggle with getting outside resources for my sons and myself. With everything we have gone through trying to find family mental health support to help support us is as important as it is stressful. This matters to me because the past 4 years have been tough on my sons and I. On April 14, 2019, 4 days after giving birth to Gavin, I ended up on life support fighting for my life. I've never received proper assistance nor support, not only for myself, but for my oldest son, Gabriel, as well. Although I was able to recover physically, but it's been a struggle mentally after all these years because I'm scared to even want to have any more kids because of my life-changing experience. At the time, my son's school, where he was attending, there wasn't much support. I had to fight to get him therapy services in school, but it's still hard to find outside resources to help us as a family right now. In order to make the vision a reality, alongside paid parent leaders, I would like to see more quality resources and effective support for all families. Mental health is a top priority in my life because we deal with constant trauma every day in our community, constantly having to heal from one thing after another. It's hard trying to heal, grieve, all while parenting. So I hope you can become a strong partner and advocate with other single moms such as myself and other families in the city to continue to fight for the demand need inside and outside of schools and community for the mental health awareness crisis that we are up against today. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay. Hello, my name is Kimaya Haywood, and I'm a resident of Ward 8, and I attend McKinley Technology High School. Today I will be speaking to you about DC's college and career advocacy. There are many programs in DC that help DC students go to college, but not enough mentors and funding to make sure that they're staying. A lot of the time you get help to go to college, but most of the time students drop out their first year because they don't have enough support in and throughout college. Although student counselors are a great asset to students, they also need more than just that counselor that has to deal with hundreds of other students. Sometimes life after high school can be overwhelming, so extra support is needed, such as a mentor. We should have a program where mentors can be assigned to college students and help them out throughout all 4 years of college. I have friends that were able to finish college due to the fact they didn't have any support, but one student I knew made it with the help of a mentor group that I believe all kids in DC should have access to. Many programs such as the Community Enrichment Program, Horton's Kids, and College Bound, to name a few other substantial resources to youth who seek higher education, but DC as a city should put a policy in place that allows many first-generation other college students to have guidance and mentorship and to ensure successfulness. Without all the support they had gave him, he wouldn't have been able to make it throughout college because he would have been lost on his own with no one to mentally, physically, or financially help him. Another student I know decided that college wasn't for her because she would feel overwhelmed by the whole process and didn't have enough support. She needed to complete it. With a mentor, they could have helped her go through the whole college application process and decision making. They could have helped her write and critique college applications, college essays, and apply for scholarships to help navigate her career path. Everyone should have support leaving high school because it's not easy to make it in the world on your own. Through this mentor program, we can support students that choose to prepare for the educational and career path that fits their goals in life. Once on their way, mentor teams help high school graduates keep moving forward while pursuing their calling. This particular experience will reduce violence, increase recreation and higher education for the city, and gain exposure to families and support generations of wealth and diplomacy.
Good evening. My name is Yvette Selby, and I live in Ward 5. My twins will be graduating from McKinley Tech and Capital City High School in June. I currently serve as PAVE Parent Leader on the Ward 5 and citywide parent leader boards. I want to thank you for your advocacy and leadership on issues of equity and the impact of our DC kids. Today, I'm testifying to highlight the importance of out-of-school time enrichment programs. This matters to me because we as parents, educators, decision makers need to focus on the needs of our kids by removing barriers as a community so that they get the opportunity to grow into productive and successful adults. One of the things that I did to support my kids' interest in academic development was enrolling them in STEM-based out-of-school time programs at a young age. In the early years, my son participated in programs related to his interest around robotics, computers, RV cars, and competition. My daughter's interest led her to participate in programs that were focused on animal sciences and taking care of animals. In order to gain access to these programs, especially when they were in middle school, I had to travel to as far away as Fort Washington, Maryland, or in other wards of the cities to find adequate out-of-school programs that were affordable. Through these programs, I will say my kids have experienced an abundance of opportunities. My son's love for mechanical engineering and building things led him to community-based STEM programs where he was, again, able to compete even in world competitions. Just recently, his high school team, 8 students from McKinley Tech, participated in a global electric vehicle international race in Abu Dhabi, and only 3 teams in the U.S. were able to participate in this, and it was sponsored by the parents of those students so that they could go and compete at this level. My daughter has participated in other programs that has taken her to universities to work on farms, understanding agriculture and other things, and through these experiences has led for them, both of them excelling in high school and with supporting plans to further their education. And I will say, I have a STEM background. I was fortunate to gain access to these types of programs. And I had those opportunities because of that. And one of the things I recognize is that not all kids in DC have these opportunities. They don't have the access, and we need to do more to provide the access to allow them to be able to grow and succeed and make it a reality. And in our statement of beliefs, we talk about a shared vision that includes every family receiving access to high quality programs that support their children's needs. And it goes beyond academics, and without access to quality, affordable OST programs, I worry how kids will utilize their time when not in school, recognizing we know we have an issue of crime. And so I would say together we can provide our children a safe, structured environment that will help them succeed in our global society.
Thank you. Okay, we will turn to our panel for our final round of questioning. We would like to remind all the panelists, if you have not already submitted your testimony to the State Board, if you could please email it to SBOE@dc.gov so that we can add it as an official part of the record. We're going to start with our student representatives. Representative Bernstadt.
Thank you all so much for your time. Miss Selby, I think it was. I'm also a Capital City senior, so congratulations to your kid, both your kids, but especially the one that goes to Capital City. I'm not saying it's the best school in DC, but I'm just saying extra congratulations, and I hope their senior project goes well. I have two questions. I want to start with Miss Alston. Speaking about supports for parents, do you think that it's most beneficial to have these supports like physically in the building? I know like schools with school-based health centers that focus more on physical health also offers resources for parents, or do you think it's better to find a space that's kind of both outside of the home and both outside of the school building that their children attend to offer these services?
Based off of my experience, I would say both. Is a much greater need not only inside the school building, but also outside of the school building. Like I could just speak from my experience, far as me having to change my child's school because of lack of support and help with everything that I went through with my oldest son being bullied and just being diagnosed at 5 with having anxiety and PTSD. That alone as a parent is tough because of the community that we live in. We see trauma every day, and it became desensitized, and he used to go to school talking about it as if it was normal, but the schools that he was going to, it was alarming because he was going to schools outside of our ward, and kids that does not look like him was like, oh no, that's not okay, that's not right. What you mean you saw a kid get shot? And he was like, yeah, I seen a kid get shot on the playground. And he's talking about it like as if it was okay, and it wasn't. But because he went to a school where all the kids did not look like him, including his teachers, it was an issue. And versus getting support around it, it was like as if, I was getting looked at funny and looked at crazy. And in a sense, I felt like my child didn't belong there. So it was like a constant fight of finding a school that best fits him. So now he goes to a school where not only kids that look like him, but also teachers.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Mr. Goldstein, I had a question, but I'll follow up with you after, and I haven't gotten a chance to read through all your written testimony, so feel free to defer to that. I'll ask it now, but I guess I'll ask it again later. Besides exit surveys and problems that exist within them, what else can we collect data on that's beneficial for teacher retention? 8 seconds.
7 seconds, but the reasons people leave, and I'm worried that if we let them decide which reasons to list on the survey, we're not going to get an accurate picture.
Okay, thank you all so much.
Representative Henderson.
First, I just want to say a word for the school that Ms. Selby's son and Ms. Haywood go to, the great McKinley Tech High School. We don't want to neglect that school, even as we praise others. Mr. Goldstein, thank you for your remarks about public safety. I have been encouraged tonight, I think, by the breadth of the conversation. It's clear that the people who are speaking on this issue recognize how deep and broad it is and agree that we need to keep our focus there. And I guess I don't have any questions. Just it strikes me, I know it's always budget season. It's really, really budget season right now, that we're not meeting basic needs that people have. And I appreciate your testimony here and hope that we can all just continue to elevate these to the decision makers on our budget, that there's so much more that we can do for mental health, for our out-of-school time activities, and for supports. Ms. Haywood, we had a witnessed earlier, Mr. Cordoba speaking on a similar topic, like that there's a gap that we can do more to support students as they transition from high school to college. So thank you for raising all those things.
Representative Reed.
Good evening, and thank you all. I want to lean in on the issue of, I guess, safety on the outside of schools. Yeah, I'm on the heels of literally shootings with high-powered weapons a week apart, right in front of a school. One happened to be at nighttime, one happened to be during school time. So what does safety around schools look like for you, or what should be the components of safety around schools?
There's a lot of things that have to happen around schools, but I want to say, first of all, we're giving young people this time at 3:15 at a high school ending. We have to stagger the end times, first of all. We should not be letting all high school students out at the same time. I think that's a disaster. And then also, there should be activities. They can opt out, but they should at least go till 5 o'clock for every high school student. And then there should be a lot of opportunities happening for them to have that social time that they talked about in a structured way that is not what we're doing right now. And we have to give people what they're asking for, not what they're not asking for, right? We're spending so much time debating politically what they're not asking for. What they are asking for around out-of-school time opportunities and mental health supports, we're not spending, I think, nearly sufficient time talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a response to a comment on the previous panel about psychological safety.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel that, and especially in the middle school age where kids are going through, starting puberty, adolescence, there's a lot of emotions that child is developing. And I think providing opportunities to put them in spaces where they can feel psychologically safe will also help with what happens outside of schools.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that's them being in school after school till 5, 6 o'clock. But then also we have to think about summer where we don't have a lot of opportunities, and where are there psychological safe spaces for kids to grow where they're learning.
Mm-hmm. No one else. Cool. I would like to continue to marinate on that. I'm actually not really worried about the kids. I'm more worried about adults in the community engaged in certain activities. So y'all want to connect on that, happy to.
Representative Goulet.
Again, just want to thank PAVE. Throughout this budget cycle, you've hit on the things that we really need to fill the gaps in the community. Ms. Roberts, your story is really powerful. You're giving your kids the one thing that every kid needs the most, which is a parent who will do anything for them. So when you feel like it's tough, you're doing an amazing job. So it's just, we should be doing more as a city. I know you guys are fighting for that additional funding for school-based mental health coming up on second reading. I do hope the council can find that money, because that's a program that we started up. It should be in every school. And it's absolutely clear that kids need the help right now on those issues. So thank you for really just a powerful statement there as to why that's important. And then out of school time, Scott, you talked about this as well. From 3:15 to 6 o'clock, students should be in something that they want to be in, like something that just sparks joy in them throughout the day. And we should actually listen to them what that is, because I don't know for each student what it is. We shouldn't just try to stick them in places and try to give them more tutoring or give them more this, that. We should hear what they want to do and then try to develop those programs so that when 6 o'clock rolls around, parents are getting off work, dinner time, the student can go to bed, with a positive experience in the day, and it's something they're looking forward to the next day. So, I mean, I think that should be the #1 priority that we develop. I mean, we've tried to focus on birth to 3, pre-K, but now let's get this missing link in there, and I think that would go a long way to preventing the violence we're seeing right now. And Gabrielle, I love your idea. I just absolutely love the idea, because we've been told time and time again about how, you know, we get DC youth going into college, and then they're not finishing college, they're dropping out, and having a mentor to be able to just talk to about what's going on, you know, questions, you know, selecting a major, you know, concerns, struggles, like maybe feeling homesick, like just somebody who's been through it, I think would make an amazing difference. I'd love to work with you on setting that up. It'd be something that I think, you know, it would be so helpful, particularly for students that maybe don't have parents who went to college, for somebody to speak with. Have you connected with anybody, you know, on setting that up? Because it's just such an interesting and helpful idea. Well, I'd love to work with you on it. And are you a junior right now or senior? Junior. Okay, so we got some time. Okay, we got a year. Let's keep working on this. I just love that idea. And you know, we have a great student rep here who's going off to Harvard here soon. So think about applying to be a member of this board here. You know, we're looking for people like yourself who've got, you know, a vision like that. So consider it.
Applications are open now. Just want to put that plug out there. You can also find that on the State Board website. We'll have Representative Williams.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all for your testimony. Ms. Selby, I do want to say before I forget that it's been a pleasure to teach Amani this year. And if she needs help with her senior expedition, I'm happy to support it in the last 2 weeks. But in terms of the out-of-school time part of your testimony, I appreciate just kind of being redirected back to PAVE's policy solutions, because I think they're so thorough in being able to think through this like citywide and look at like cost-saving measures, but also look at how we're targeting like communication to make resources more available. So I appreciate those links, and I'm gonna look back through that. Mr. Wilson, I also think that in terms of like our committee of systemic policy on the board, like looking at the cross-sector piece around requiring that data from charter schools is important. I've seen, you know, teachers and friends leave in different iterations over the last decade, and they've had frustrations for a long time, and then when it comes time to leave, because that information isn't anonymous, they don't give the authentic answers, and then the problems persist. So I think also requiring anonymity in those surveys so that we can be able to assess the true reasons as to why teachers are leaving is really critical cross-sector for being able to support school cultures. I'm also encouraged, and we started talking about it as a committee around, you know, looking at policy evaluations for impact and, you know, what we can do to really support evaluation citywide. And so I'm encouraged by the committee and our board's willingness to be able to kind of take that on. Yeah, I wanted to kind of like turn things back over to you for a second if you have particular recommendations.
The State Board proposed the Data Warehouse Amendment Act. A bunch of that's now being done, right? But there'll be a few gaps. And there's a few weeks here before the council finalizes the budget that I think you could influence council members to just make those small changes in the Budget Support Act, and we'll have it all done right now in the next few weeks, because I think some of these changes are pretty minor. The gap between what you've proposed and what's being done now with the exit surveys, that with some push, I think we could close that gap, including asking the charter schools report the same data the council's asking DCPS to report in their annual reports to PCSB. I think that would be a pretty simple way to do it, and we could get the same data for both sectors. 22% of DCPS teachers left last year. 38% of charter school teachers left last year. So there's a particular issue to work on.
Yeah, thank you. And I know that some of those changes don't even need to be financial, you know, they just need to be policy shifts. So I'll follow up with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will go to Representative Best.
Thank you very much. Scott, You mentioned providing our students with out of school time opportunities until 5. I personally love that idea. Obviously, allowing for people to opt out if they need to. And it's something we discussed a while ago. How do you think flexible scheduling can open that opportunity up? And how do you believe that could help our teachers as well as be something as well as add to the safety of our students?
Yeah, I may have gotten some of that idea from you, so I appreciate your advocacy on it for a while. I think flexible scheduling is huge in it. So when we presented our report on flexible scheduling, and we proposed a lot of different models, one of the models was for high school to start later and end later, and to mix in a lot of these activities with the day that wouldn't end until 5 o'clock. The Deputy Mayor for Education said that was the model we proposed that he was most interested in pursuing and advancing. So there's potential to do that, and I think we should do it. Some of the things others talked about, like having to travel really far for some of these opportunities, and sometimes we call it like the summer camp gap, right? The experiences that some people get and some people don't get based on their ability and privilege to afford those experiences. We can close that gap by doing flexible scheduling, because if we embed some of these activities within the school day, we can make sure that it's not just people with wealth and privilege who are getting swimming, who are getting biking, who are getting all kinds of experiences during school. So let's make the week more flexible. Let's put those things into the school day, expand the hours, which also helps with student safety. So I think flexibility in the day and the week can help us solve a lot of these things at the same time. And teacher retention. I'll just mention really briefly, I was at a school at the end of the day today where someone didn't know I was with Empower Ed, but mentioned to someone else, I got an email from Empower Ed about flexible scheduling getting funded. And he said, I called my girlfriend and told him I'm not moving to California anymore because any school district gives me flexible schedule and I'm staying here for life. So that is like how serious some of the teachers are taking their investment and what it might mean for them. And obviously, that may have been a joke, but it can be transformative for our teachers and for our students.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Representative Chang.
Ms. Alston, thank you for sharing your story and your experiences. I have a question about what the experience was like to try to get your son therapy resources in school. What was that process like, and how did it end up?
It was a tough process because most people look at parents who kids need therapy for other reasons like physical disabilities and such in that nature. But because I seen the need in my child, I felt like I had to keep advocating for him because, he doesn't need therapy because he doesn't act like this in school, or he portrays as trying to be on his best behavior in school, but not realizing I deal with these issues at home once he's out of school. So, and he probably have like every now and then episodes in school, and then it comes off as bad behavior. And it's like, maybe we need to look into a 504 plan. And I'm like, if I already brought this issue up and alarmed you and made you aware of these things before they happen, it should have been services and things set in place beforehand, especially if I didn't already went to the extent of having him evaluated by a psychiatrist and have them providing recommendations for him because she felt like she didn't want to diagnose him with a disability that's not attached to him, but knowing that he has some type of need and he needs some type of service and support around this need. And it was a struggle because even getting therapy at the age of 4 for him, 4 and 5, he probably went to one session, and after that, the therapist was no longer at that organization. So it was just like trying to find other organizations and calling around and asking, do you take kids? No, we don't take kids. Or he got to be a certain age. And even now at 11, it's still a constant struggle for me because the need of psychiatrists and social workers inside schools. So it's like, it's a
For-
struggle, but I push and I advocate as much as I can.
For the resources that you've turned to, it sounds like outside of school is what you've turned to, right?
Yes.
Are they self-paid?
No. Most of them are like free based off of organizations
Okay.
that I've signed up for as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
But that goes so far
Mm-hmm.
because it's community-based organization. So it's little to no funding that they're being provided, and not all the time they have someone that me and my kids can actually talk to.
Thank you.
Vice President O'Leary.
Do you have anything else, Ms. Roberts, to finish that? Because oh, Ms. Alston, I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong name. Do you have anything else to finish your thought?
No.
Because unfortunately, it's not unique. I have a child who had a 504 and wasn't serviced, and it's stressful. And I appreciate your testimony. Mr. Goldstein, I have a couple of questions. You threw out a couple of figures, 22% and 38%, which are not even in the same ballpark with OSSI's report, and not even in the same state with DCPS's report on teacher retention.
Those numbers are from OSSI's report. So OSSI's report showed 30% overall turnover, school level turnover, and that 30% breaks down into 22% left DCPS, 38% left charter. So those are from OSSI's report.
Okay. You were talking about flexible scheduling, and since COVID started, the world has been on flexible scheduling, and we're still here.
Yeah.
Why is it that hard to? We shouldn't be teaching the same way that we taught in 1950. They were talking about the going back to normal. Remember when COVID first hit and everybody was looking for going back to normal? Normal wasn't working when we got COVID.
That's right.
So please keep up the fight for that, and we will too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Thompson.
All right, thank you all for being our last panel. Glad you made it, Ms. Selby. Good to see you. Thank you for your testimony about out of school time. Kamaya, am I saying your name? Kumaya? Am I saying your name correctly? So I happen to know your principal. Is it okay if I share your thoughts? I'm asking you with your principal. Okay, and I can say you had a student come testify because, I'm going to ask permission first before I blow your whole spot up. Okay, just checking. Received, I will do that this evening. Ms. Alston, I want to acknowledge your testimony because I saw how much it hurt you to even have to come here and say that to us. And yeah. So just thank you for that. Mr. Goldstein, now I will start here. The data warehouse legislation, I think, is important because I think knowing why our teachers are making the decisions they're making are important across all the sectors. So I am committed to making sure that moves in some way, shape, or form. I want to use the rest of my time to address the comments around student safety because I wouldn't be, I think, dishonest if I didn't share my reaction. I don't get to be, quite frankly, angry or sanctimonious as a black woman in this city. But hearing you say that our conversation tonight put it on the students, really, I'm just going to tell you how it strikes me, really struck me wrong, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I don't think it's actually this body who has made the conversation political. And every time I hear people rattle off shootings and incidents, as much as I don't think it should happen anywhere, the same level of outrage and sensitivity is not provided to the community that I call home. We started this conversation as the board, and I know you know that because you watch everything we do, and I think you tweeted out something about it because I was at a loss because the same community that showed up tonight and talked about Sousa, we had like 60 shell cases on the ground, and nobody said anything. And one of the things that challenges me so much about this SRO conversation in particular is that we are not being completely honest around all the functions they serve. I'm gonna say this last thing. It unsettles me that I will get a call from someone in the mayor's office because in the last, I would say 60 days, I've had at least 2 shootings outside of a high school during dismissal time. And I was called and asked, do I have the phone number to the principal on more than one occasion because we no longer have SROs in the vicinity to let the school know to lock down. That is not an argument for SROs. It is an argument for saying, as we have this conversation, it's not a distraction, but we have to tell the whole truth around the responsibilities and who needs to pick them up to protect our students. And we're not honestly having that conversation.
That comment was not about the board. We would like to thank all of our public witnesses tonight. This is our last panel, and we thank each of you all for your testimony. And we, again, remind you to submit your official testimony to the State Board via email at SBOE@dc.gov. Thank you.
I want to thank all the public witnesses for their comments tonight. I do mean that the board sincerely appreciates it. I want to note 2 things. One, we are now moving to the administrative portion of our agenda. Tonight's meeting is actually going to be the first time we adopt a consent agenda for ceremonial resolution, so I will talk more about that process in a moment. I first want to address our state resolution. We have one state resolution to vote on. The state resolution, SR 23-4, is on external committee appointments. All right. SR 23-4 on external committee appointments. Is there a motion to move that resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been moved and seconded. Director Butler, please read the language into the record.
State Board of Education State Resolution on External Committee Appointments, SR 2304. Whereas the DC State Board of Education is committed to leveraging research, advocacy, positive relationships, and policy recommendations to drive improvements in the quality of public education in the District of Columbia, especially for our most vulnerable students. Whereas the State Board contains standing committees, ad hoc committees, and task forces to enhance the fundamental education-related matters such as school safety, healthy school facilities, mental health and well-being, education standards, literacy, teacher retention, and more. Whereas the State Board has identified several external committees on which it is important for the State Board to be represented. Whereas the State Board discussed future and continued external committee appointments during the March 1st working session and the March 4th member retreat. Now therefore be it resolved that the State Board appoints the following representatives to the external committees. Community School Advisory Committee, Representative Brandon Best, Ward 6. Compact on Education Opportunity for Military Children, Jacques Patterson at large. DC Interstate Commissions on Education for Military Children, Fraser O'Leary, Vice President, Ward 4. District of Washington Area Boards of Education, Jacques Patterson at large. Environmental Literacy Committee, Ebony Rose Thompson, President, Ward 7. Everyday Counts Truancy Task Force, Ben Williams, Ward 1. National Association of State Boards of Education, Government Affairs Committee, Eric Goulet, Ward 3. The National Association for the State Boards of Education, Public Education Positions Committee, Ebony Rose Thompson, President, Ward 7. Office of the State Superintendent, Early Literacy Education Task Force, Alistair Chang, Ward 2. Research, Practice, and Partnership, Robert Henderson, Ward 5. School Parking Zones Working Group, Fraser O'Leary, Vice President, Ward 4. Be it further resolved that the representatives above are directed to report updates on their external committee appointments monthly at the State Board's working sessions. Be it finally resolved that these appointments will continue until their strategic objectives are accomplished or until December 31st, 2024, whichever is sooner.
Thank you, Director Butler. Is there any discussion on the motion? On the resolution, excuse me. Hearing and seeing none, the motion is on the adoption of SR 23-4. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you, members. Our other administrative votes. So this will be the first time the State Board will adopt a consent agenda for our ceremonial resolutions. Executive Director Butler is actually going to read the titles of the resolutions to be included in tonight's agenda. Before she does that, are there any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda? All right. Is there a motion to approve the items on tonight's consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been moved by Representative O'Leary and I think seconded by Representative Henderson, if I heard that correctly. That's what I said. Having been properly moved and seconded, the motion is now open for discussion. Members, any discussion on these items? Read the names, and then is there any discussion on these items?
The following items are included in tonight's consent agenda. CR 23-5, recognizing Jamar Coach Roundtree as the 2023 Washington, D.C. Teacher of the Year and finalist for the 2023 National Teacher of the Year Award. CR 23-6, recognizing Ann Beers Elementary School Leadership Departure. CR 23-7, celebrating the Aussie Educator Awardees.
All right, now that we know what the items are, is there any discussion on these items? Representative O'Leary, Vice President O'Leary.
I'd just like to mention what a fabulous teacher Coach Roundtree is, and it's You should go and watch him. He does a fabulous job there. And also that we had a wonderful time at the OSSI Awards for all of the teachers of the year. And they were well deserved.
All right, if there are no others, I will second Vice President O'Leary's comments around Coach Roundtree. I will also say that I want to thank, because I'm going to get a couple of times to thank Principal Payton and Vice Principal Higgins for their service. We are going to have a celebration for them on June 1st in Ward 7. Ms. Payton is the longest serving principal in DCPS currently with 17 years. And she is phenomenal and has poured beautiful things into Ann Beers during that time and every other place she has been. And Ms. Higgins, I totally understand why she is leaving on a high note with Ms. Payton. If there is no further discussion, I'm going to ask all in favor of approving the items on the consent agenda.
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right. Motion's approved. Thank you, members, for trying something new with us. I hope that continues to work well, and we will get the language all the way right so it can be even more efficient in the future. Okay. New business. Members, are there any announcements or comments for new business before we adjourn? All right, I see hands. We're going to go Representative Bernstead, Representative Reed. Anyone else? I have one announcement, and then I think that will close us out.
Morelia left, but today's her last public meeting, so I wanted to say thank you to her because she's done so much for the board in this short time, because her last day is the 16th, if I'm not mistaken, and then our next public meeting is going to be after that, right? It's the 20th, 21st or something like that.
Yeah, she did move up her departure.
Oh, okay, never mind. I love her, but never mind.
Okay, good evening, members. One announcement, or actually two. The Anacostia Environmental Youth Summit is this Friday, May 19th at the Anacostia Park at the Skate Pavilion. It's from 10 a.m. to 2:45 p.m., sponsored by KC Trees and other outdoor vendors. There are about 300 students registered to attend. So a great opportunity to engage students around the environment. And one last plug, members are welcome to come to listening session at Blue High School on Friday at 10 a.m. Just in a listening posture, asking questions. Today I asked about student safety and about preparing for the report card work that we're about to take on. So if you want to just ask questions, hear directly from students, it's an opportunity that I extend to you all.
All right. I want to reiterate a housekeeping announcement that Director Butler savvily slid in during our public comment. Our applications are open for student members. I know people do watch our meetings, and I want you all to know that students from across the city can sit on this dais with us. We always have 4 student representatives, 2 that come from east of the river, and then there are also fabulous students that you all do not see, which are part of our student advisory committee. Much like our consent agenda, it is a very efficient application because you can apply for both of those things at the same time. And so I look forward and hope to see many students apply for our student advisory committee and our student representative seats. I see a hand from Representative Henderson.
Just for clarification, that's residency in Ward 7 or 8, not the school?
Oh, correct. So the two seats for East of the River are East of the River east of the River youth. They can go to school wherever they want.
Well, actually, it's one student that goes to school or lives in Ward 7 or 8 is a requirement, but we try to have 2. So if they don't live in Ward 7 or 8, so long as they're in the school community there, or at least that's how we've been doing it. That's what the requirements are.
what's the process for selecting students once the applications have been submitted?
Yeah, so the applications go out. Members, you will have a chance to review the applications. We will score the applications, and selections are made based on the scores. But we will get you will get a full rundown of how this works and the whole process. Oh, and I should say this is earlier than we usually do it. We usually do it a little bit later, unfortunately, but it kind of made sense to move that up since students might be leaving their school soon.
We just have one thing. We have 12 high school seniors on our student advisory committee who we will be celebrating at the June student advisory committee meeting, which will be June 12th. So we invite all of our members to come out and celebrate with our high school seniors, where we will give them a certificate of appreciation and a stole that they can wear with their cap and gown.
Ooh.
All right, I love a good stole. Are there any other last call for announcements or new business? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, is there a second? All right, it has been moved and seconded. All in favor of adjournment, please let me know.
Aye.
All right, thank you. We are adjourned at 9:11 p.m. We will convene our next our next working session, June 7th, and June 21st will be our public meeting.